Welcome to Armchair Expert. I'm Herman Permian. I'm joined by my mom. Hi, Mom.
Hi, son.
You're not going to believe this, Miss Monica.
Tell me.
Good friend of mine's here.
Who?
Herman Pontzer.
Herman, did you make him up?
No, that's really our guest, Herman Pontzer.
Wow.
Herman Pontzer.
Pontzer.
What a maybe my favorite name we've had for a guest.
Really good name. A really cool guy.
Incredibly cool. Professor of evolutionary anthropology and global health at Duke University. He's an internationally recognized researcher in human energetics and evolution. His previous book, which is great, is called Burn, Some Shocking Ways We Consume Calories.
We talked about it, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, we did a little section on burn. And then his new book, Adaptable, How Your Unique Body Really Works and Why Our Biology Unites Us. This was so fun.
It was.
Evolutionary biology is one of my favorite things to think about.
In anthropology.
Yeah, like what was oh my God, we were just discussing what could have been the cause of you and I.
I know.
You were saying women want to get something of their boyfriends to smell.
Yes.
Like a t-shirt or something. It's a very common desire.
For a woman to want, yeah.
And I never met a guy who tried to get a shirt from a girl. Something's there.
I know.
I wonder if when there's a quantum computer that can model the future and all that, if it can go backwards in time and somehow we would get answers to these things.
Well, in the meantime, Herman's working on it.
Herman rocked. This is a really, really interesting episode. I'm usually threatened by other anthropology majors because they actually know all this stuff, and I'm mostly ill-informed, as we find out a few times in this episode.
I'm glad that you allowed it, because we all got to learn.
Please enjoy Herman Pontzer.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Dax is getting a new tattoo, and Rob is.
Matching? So like when you hug each other, it forms a full...
Yes. But
Like
only
the
our wives will
friendship.
see it. So you're from Pennsylvania? Mm-hmm. Whereabouts? I'm a Michigander.
Okay. Did you ever see Groundhog Day?
Yes.
Bill Murray's finest work.
Punxsutawney. What is it?
Punxsutawney.
Punxsutawney.
So we played Punxsutawney in high school ball. Like they were that close.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that part, that's sort of, and they kind of nailed it. That's sort of the vibe. I lived in Brooklyn for a few years, and it almost broke me. But one of the things, it was the F train. You know, you'd be like on the F train at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was like a meat wagon. You were just like packed in. And just to pass the time once, I was like, I wonder how many people are on this train. And I did the math, and then how many cars there are. And I was like, oh, there's more people on this train, all the cars, than there are in the hometown I grew up in.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was
Popular.
crazy. So 800 people in my hometown of Kersey, Pennsylvania.
And what did mom and dad do?
High school teachers.
Okay,
English,
in
yeah.
Kersey?
Actually, Kersey's not big enough to have a high school. So the town next door, St. Mary's, they were there. Yeah,
Okay.
where I went to high school too.
And how many acres did you grow up on?
It's kind of a long story, but so the Pontzer family was one of the first families to move into that area. It was not super densely settled ever.
Yeah.
Even like the Native American folks were like, this is a junky land. We don't want to spend a whole lot of time here.
Yeah.
And so the Pontzer, my extended family owns like hundreds of acres of forest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And could you get lost in there as a kid
100%.
and explore?
Yeah. You could walk out. I lived at the end of a dirt road in a house that my dad built.
Physically with his
hands and his buddy Dean.
Okay.
And it was wonderful. And I had, grew up riding motorcycles and hiking around
Wow.
and hunting and all the, it was a kind of an amazing way to grow up.
Yeah.
Would you be out tromping around with a BB gun when you were little? Or
Totally. The first time I got like an actual firearm, I think was for my 10th birthday.
10th
Wow.
birthday.
Yeah.
A 22?
Yep. But my life, life is so different now because, now in the academics university
Yes.
world, that's not a background that you see very often.
Exactly.
Right. It's kind of looked down upon.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Well, this is a whole other avenue, but we talk about diversity in the university and everybody is for that, but it means different things to different people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it would be interesting to me to see diversity of backgrounds that way. You don't see a lot of folks from rural America in the
right.
ivory tower.
No. And also maybe a little more socioeconomic thrust.
Yes.
Because we've divided up into these lines that are pretty comical in ways.
Yeah.
Is some of it, though, do we think chicken chicken or the egg a little bit. Like at this point, I think if you're in certain parts of the country, you don't want to be associated with like liberal elite institutions. We've created it as like a us them.
I think about the folks I grew up with. One of my best friends growing up, he's a union electrician. Still lives back in Kersey, and he's got a great life, great family. I mean, that's that was an avenue that is a wonderful way to go. But he would never have considered doing what I'm doing. This wasn't even like on the radar.
Right.
And I'm sure, who knows what his kid's going to do and that kind of. But it is really kind of dichotomized that way.
It is.
Where'd you go to undergrad?
Penn State.
Penn State.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you did graduate school at Harvard?
That's right.
Okay. And when did you get in the anthro trajectory? Did you do any reading about me? I also was an anthropology
No, I know.
major.
I was going to tell you that I'm actually here from UCLA, and that we're here to, the anxiety dream where you have the class that you never finish, and they tell you have an exam. I have with me here. We're here to do this with you.
Okay, wonderful.
This is great.
Yeah, 25 years out. Let's see how I do.
I want to see what's changed.
I think I'll do bad, and I think I'll be 3 standard deviations above what most people do. So how about that?
Oh, there you go.
Some humility and some arrogance.
Yes.
Yeah. I've retained, I think, more than your average bear, but I'm probably wrong about
Were
one.
you excited about the physical anthro, the cultural anthro? Were you like floor field? How did you do it?
Yeah, so I deeply regret what I did, which is I was enamored and intoxicated with the excitement of cultural anthropology and learning about mating rituals and patrilocal and matrilocal and all these things, even the kind of fakir, modern, primitive, that was exciting. But as I got into it, I was like, oh, no, I'm way more interested in physical anthro, specifically evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
I found that I left with like, I need to know more how we ended up as a species before I study what the species then did culturally.
Yes. Yeah.
What was your route?
I went to Penn State not having any real idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I took a seminar in human evolution that was co-taught by a cultural guy and a sociobiologist, bioanthro guy.
Yeah.
And the cultural guy had sort of, I think the postmodern stuff had kind of passed him by, and he was sort of not into that.
Okay.
And so he was a good foil for the evolutionary guy because they both kind of saw things sort of the same way. Cultural anthro and bioanthro can be very at odds.
Someone was even telling me, like, at Berkeley, we just interviewed someone. They were like, look, if you get in this trajectory, you can't talk to the physical anthrop. Like, we don't even actually want you speaking to them, which was kind of nuts.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of that kind of schism still now. But luckily for me, these guys were sort of really complemented each other well. And that class just lit my hair on fire.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So my parents are both high school teachers. It was a home where like we talked a lot about ideas and had arguments that were good arguments. Like it was really fun growing up. And it was such good training looking back. They were English teachers. So like evolutionary biology wasn't their thing really.
Yeah.
And to sort of have a whole nother way to look at the human species and this evolutionary deep time perspective and all these quirks and weird things about you think, oh, but actually there's a reason for those. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God.
That's what was illuminating to me. First, I'll say even before anthro was a Western Civ class, like learning how did we get to where I woke up in Milford, Michigan, 1975, and I was prescribed all these things.
Yeah.
Are these how arbitrary are they? Where do they come from? That was like, oh, wow, there's an actual explanation for why we're doing everything the way we're doing. Totally. And then you reverse from there, and it's like, oh, and there's an even greater explanation. And then the physical part is the grand explanation.
Yeah.
I'm really glad, just in your intro, I'm really glad at how you lay this out, because one of my great interests was always these differences in populations. I just was drawn to them immediately, finding out like, oh, we kind of know that Native Americans came from Asia because they have a dish incisor and only Asians have a dish incisor, and so do Native. Like, oh, wow, that's a really cool, hard bit of evidence clue. I like that.
Yeah.
And for people to know the history of anthropology, there was a field called anthropometry. Which studied specifically differences between people.
Yes.
And was heavily weaponized and used during the Nazi era.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Fed completely into the whole eugenics. That was the big push, was that.
Right. Was the field of anthropology. So that kind of went away.
Yeah.
With good reason. It was being terribly exploited for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
But my interest was always like, not from any place of superiority, just a deep curiosity of how we could have these variations within the same species.
Right. And you begin talking about the ways that populations differ, or even just more fundamentally how people differ. And because of that really dark history, people get nervous right away. And so I think the sort of superpower that an anthropology background gives you is you spend 4 years in college or whatever it is talking about this, trying to dissect, okay, well, why are people are different? That's a good thing. How and why?
How is it adaptive to where they live?
Yes, exactly. And how much of it's noise and how much of it's signal, because there's a lot of noise, and how much is different within groups versus between. And then once you sort of see it gets less scary, right? You go, okay, that's how that works.
And it's actually a weapon in debunking racism.
Yeah. And I think right now, when I look at the social media world, which has gotten kind of weird, even weirder recently, the only people who want to talk about difference that way are the race realists, which are the new world. That's a new word for eugenics, right? That's
what do they call it?
Race realism, race realists, this kind of thing.
Oh, saying like we understand that there's differences between races.
Yeah, and it's
like they're telling the truth about race.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Oh God.
I doubt they are.
Exactly.
It's really kind of scary. And so you don't have anybody with any real background in how this works talking about it because everybody's afraid to.
And so then they get to come to the surface.
So let's talk about it, in a way that's sort of evidence-based, that's less scary. Let's unpack it. I think you have to start with how the body works, right? Because I think people don't have a fluency in that. You start there. How does embryology work? How does the brain work? How do your muscles work? I mean, if you start with those pieces, then you can say, well, then how come your physique is different than yours?
Exactly.
Or mine, or whatever. How does skin color work? And then now we can understand why skin colors differ. And it's not a scary thing. This is the biology of it, right? That's how we talk about it.
Yeah, so the book, Adaptable, aims to educate you on how your body works.
Right.
But instead of it just being a straight biology textbook, there's going to be exploration of the lifestyle of the people, the landscape, the local adaptations. So it's a very fun lens to look at it. So I guess let's just start with the history of us as humans.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're part of the great ape family tree, part of the family tree. So our lineage kind of busts out about 7 million years ago breaks away from the lineage that becomes chimps and bonobos. But the first 5 million years, I think of it as basically the ewok chapter of human evolution. You're walking on two legs, but you're furry and kind of ape-like.
And maybe you're not. Are you fully bipedal?
Yeah, well, the people argue about, let's just say yes.
Okay, great.
So the earliest ones probably have a grasping foot. We see that in a couple of these, like Ardipithecus. That's changed since you left. That's
I know A.F. Forensis and I don't know.
So prior to Lucy's A.F. Forensis is Ardipithecus. And the initial stuff was found in the 90s, but wasn't fully reported until 2009, I think.
Oh, so I was 9 years out.
See?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, so he's what?
He's walking on two legs.
He's the first one to walk on two legs.
So as far as we go back, as we can tell, the earliest ones, even before that one, are walking on two legs. And actually, that's interesting. The evidence for that is, if you look at the skull of one of the earliest fossils we have, you can figure out the orientation of the spinal column. And if it comes straight down out of the head, vertical, then it's probably on two legs. And if it comes towards out of the back, then it's probably on. So that's the kind of ways they put these things together.
Yeah.
Isn't it neat? I love that stuff.
Really
the
cool.
osteology class was my favorite one in all of physical anthropology.
Yeah.
So Australopithecine is no longer the earliest one.
No, you're already 2 million years.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
This is humiliating. Do we still embrace? Can I just add my favorite one was Gigantopithecus.
Yeah, but that's like our long lost Asian cousin.
Right, that was in Asia.
Yeah,
but that was a giant biped.
It still is the biggest ape ever.
Wow,
like,
how
big,
big?
way bigger. Well, gosh, twice the size of a gorilla or something crazy like that.
Oh,
They're really, really big.
Think Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I think that's where some of these people are really grasping for Bigfoot to be real.
Yeah.
They like the Gigantopithecus.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful story of a professor I think he's in Idaho, who did his whole PhD on very normal kind of anatomy and questions in anthropology. And then once he had tenure, he was like, yes.
Let's party.
And now he's like all about Bigfoot. And I'm like, I have respect for that.
How tall was the Gigantopithecus?
Yeah, see.
We can fact check
This
it
is the
later.
fun stuff. Well, gorillas aren't that tall, right?
No, but they're
It's mostly
450 pounds.
Yeah, right. I don't know, 6 feet tall. Let's go 6 feet tall. If I had to guess. I'm not sure how much like full skeletons of it either. We have mostly like cranial dental stuff, heads and teeth.
9.8 feet.
9.8 feet. Stop
feet.
it.
Let's go.
I like that better.
You want
than
the source. I can see it on your face. What's the source, Rob?
I do.
Britannica.
Yeah. Oh, you just
Okay.
He doesn't like that.
Sponsor.
Wikipedia says 12 feet.
No,
okay,
no.
The wisdom of the crowds. I'm gonna have to write a new book.
Okay, so I sidetracked you. So 7 million years ago.
That's right. And so you got these bipeds. They're walking on two legs, but they've got grasping feet, for at least for the first couple million years. Then you get Lucy, an Australopithecus afarensis, and that's another very successful chapter.
Not everyone knows about Lucy.
Okay, she came out of the Rift Valley, right? We found her.
Yeah, so she's one of the earliest kind of, let's say, full skeletons that we've ever found. So it's not just a head and it's not just a tooth. It's like you can kind of see the whole thing.
Wow.
It was a really big deal, and it's just been 50 years since that discovery, actually.
Wow.
And it was named after his wife? Yeah, is that?
It was named after Lucy and the Scarlet Diamonds, which was playing on the radio as they were
Louis
excavating.
Leakey, is that who found it?
No. This is up in Ethiopia, and this is no. So they named Lucy after this song,
the
Lucy and the
Beatles
Scarlet
song.
Diamonds.
Wow.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Anthropologists are cool.
Very.
Yeah, they name it after drug songs and stuff.
Beatles.
Yeah. So specifically a drug Beatles song, even better.
Australopithecus, methamphetamine, never caught on.
Okay, so they find Lucy.
But again, I mean, still very ape-like, right? I mean, as far as we can tell in terms of diet and stuff, eating almost all plants. There's some interesting ideas these days that they might have had some very simple tools, maybe. But things don't really shift away from like an ape-like kind of way of life until you get hunting and gathering going 2 million years ago.
And we get fired as well around?
So that doesn't show up till about 1 million years ago. So there's a gap. So there's about 2.5 million years ago, we start hunting and gathering. And that changes everything because, just think about what it means to have a species that does two different things.
Yeah.
No other species does that. I mean, there's species that kind of generalize and try to do, any individual bear, for example, will eat fruits and will hunt a little bit. And so they're generalists.
Yes.
But there's no other species that half of the group does one thing, acts like a carnivore.
Yeah.
The other half acts like an herbivore and gets plant foods. Yeah. And then so you get the advantages of both and they share. No, I mean, then you have to share it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Animals don't like to share, right?
Yeah.
Very rarely. And in fact, even apes don't share much.
No. Well, for sex trade, they do.
Yeah, exactly. But only, very specific contexts and very little in terms of the total amounts.
No one throws it into a big pot other than lions, maybe.
Yeah. So you get, social carnivores. That's another example, wolves. But that's how rare it is. You can kind of think of specific examples.
Right.
Almost every animal just keeps it. That's what usually works the best.
Yeah.
So
for your
there's this
survival.
whole, and that has permeated everything. So I come in here and I don't know you guys, but you don't kill me. That's crazy.
That is nuts.
And then you offer me food.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
And anytime you have a celebration, you're sharing food. I mean, that just becomes, that's the fabric of what humans are all about.
Right.
And then what's fun about that is it's just this snowball of social complexity, intellectual complexity. All of a sudden, brains are doing not just figuring out where the food is and not just figuring out maybe who to mate with, but they're doing all these calculations about who's in my group, who's a friend, who's an ally, who I can trust, who I can't trust. Then you have all the foraging stuff on top of that, and the complexity just snowballs. And you see the tools develop with that. So over the past 2 million years, you can literally track from simple stone tools to more complex to multi-piece tools to iPhones. It's not really, kind of
Ramps up quickly.
Yes.
Do we have any sense? Could you determine this from the archaeological record? When does mate selection shift from a game of size to perhaps a game of savvy and aptitude in hunting, aptitude in gathering?
Yeah. The easiest way to track that would be size dimorphism.
Right.
So in a gorilla, for example, males are twice as big as females, and it's because they basically just fight over who has access to the group of females, right?
And they're going to just increasingly get bigger and bigger and bigger ad infinitum because the biggest one will have access and pass on its big genes, and it just keeps going up, right?
That's right.
Male lions just keep getting bigger than female lions.
Yeah, and so that's a funny piece about human, sexual biology is that there is less sexual dimorphism than even in Lucy. So Lucy's still pretty significant sexual dimorphism.
Yeah, she's tiny, right?
She's tiny. The males are not tiny.
Right.
And so there's probably a lot of like male-male competition. That's what you'd have to infer.
Yes.
And you get to our genus, the genus Homo, and that all of a sudden starts to go away, and you get to the sort of 5-10% dimorphism that we see today.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it only 5 to 10%?
Yeah, it depends on the metric. So in terms of
Okay.
height, probably about 10%. In terms of strength, for example, it can be 20, 30%.
Yeah.
Right? It would depend on the population too.
Yeah.
But so here's what's also fun. In humans, you also get all of a sudden, not males aren't just competing against males for mates, females are competing against females for mates. So that's another obvious piece that's very different.
Yeah.
And very, I'm sure that there's some kind of interesting female competition happening within chimps, for example, but it's subtle and it's not.
Yeah. It's mostly inherited, right?
Yeah.
Their status.
Well, so the female females in chimpanzees they leave, right? So they can't inherit status from mom because mom's not there. They grow up in a community. When they hit puberty, they go to the other community.
Okay.
So females are always new. Males stay.
Okay.
And the males are duking it out for, where they are in the hierarchy.
Right.
And there's friendships too. It's not all mean. But so, yeah, males stay, females leave. So females come in. So in bonobos, for example, it's a bit different. Female groups are dominant to males in bonobos. A male's rank has everything to do with mom and his best
It's a
female friends.
matriarchy.
Kind of more so. Yeah, in terms of where the power dynamic lies.
Interesting.
Okay. So we do see that dimorphism start to shrink.
Yeah. And so you could call that a move away from pure physical competition to more sort of intellectual competition.
Okay, so we're super unique in the fact that we have split up the food gathering. That's unique.
Yeah.
What else is unique? Obviously, the way we rear young becomes
So
very
the
bizarre.
sharing that goes with that is, and so the intellectual complexity that kind of runs away and becomes these huge brains that are 3 times the size of a chimpanzee brain, you end up having to learn so much to be a successful adult that childhood gets strung out, right? So there's this 15-year, 20-year gap between being born and being a capable human.
Yeah.
Right? No other species is like that.
Yeah, you were saying at your daughter's 7th birthday party,
Yeah.
all the 7-year-olds there, if they were any other animal, would be grandparents at that age.
Oh my God. That's so wild.
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
That's a great way to think about it.
It is. And our frontal lobes aren't even developed until 25. So we are
it.
fully not even developed until it takes us 25 years.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so there's this long period where you're just, adults are working harder than they have to feed themselves because they have to bring enough food home, not just to share with everybody, but that could, if you were just sharing with other adults that were all capable, then
It's kind of a one-to-one.
yeah. But because you're also trying to feed all the young ones,
Yeah.
now you've got to get even more than you had to get before. So it's like changes the whole economics of all of it, of all the calorie gathering, basically the food gathering. And we have these extended childhoods because of how much there is to learn, because of how complex we get, right? And that's what people get wrong about brains too. People get really nervous about the biology of intelligence. And again, the racists are happy to talk about the biology of intelligence.
Yeah.
Charles, what's his name?
Oh,
yeah.
Charles Murray. Yeah.
Murray,
Murray.
thank you.
Yeah.
But what people, I think, get wrong about it is to understand how the human brain works, you're born unfinished. And you have to be born unfinished.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to learn that your brain's job is to learn how to work in its culture today. And it changes too quickly. It can't be hardwired because it's going to change so quickly that, if you sort of genetically encoded what you're supposed to learn, that wouldn't work because it won't work next generation.
It won't be adaptive.
That's right. That's right. So your brain comes in completely unfinished and you spend 15 years literally constructing your brain because every time you make a new memory, you're plugging neurons together, you're taking other ones
Building
apart.
this neural network.
Yeah. And then we measure something like IQ and we think, oh, that's something inherent about the brain. It can be, if it's a really controlled setting, you could sort of begin to understand how well a brain builds or doesn't build those connections.
Yeah.
But pretty much if you compare across people or across cultures, what you're measuring is the content that got built in there. It's a content measure. It's not an ability measure.
And then you factor in nutrition too. We were with Bill Gates in India, and one of his main thrusts is like these gaps. As much as like 30% of your intelligence can be missed if you're not hitting your nutritional goals in certain windows of your life. Like it's pretty dramatic, the impact of nutrition.
The brain is the most expensive organ in the body. And when you are 5 years old, it's at its peak need something like half of your like resting energy expenditure, the calories you're burning, minute by minute as you just rest there as a kid are going to your brain.
Well,
It's
yeah,
a huge amount.
proportionally, you look at a baby's head, it's a third of its fucking being.
Yes.
Yeah.
And inside what's going on is even more active than it would be as an adult.
Right.
Because of all the connections that are being
It's
built.
working its ass off
Yeah,
to catch
that's right.
up to this
Aw.
baseline knowledge. It's so
so
cute.
cute.
And when they're cranky, it's like, of course they're cranky. They're like, they're in a graduate class every day with a final.
Stress.
That's right. That's right. So, of course, if you miss those calories, like your body's going to try to shield your brain, but there's only so much you can do.
Okay, so are you leaning towards, because again, in 2000, the two most promising explanations for our explosion intelligence was one is our groups were growing in size and the complexity of the group and the facial recognition, all these different things, and knowing where you're at hierarchically was going to predict your mating success. And that was driving it. And then there's this other kind of fruit-based. I never loved that one. Where are we at with those two? Are those still the two debates?
Yeah, I mean, this is not going to be very satisfying. I think that's a false dichotomy, right? Because we're doing both things.
Yeah.
We're in this really complex social world, and you got to be good at that.
Yeah.
You suck at that, I'm sorry, your reproductive success is not very high.
Yeah. You get excommunicated and you die very quickly.
Yeah, it goes really far.
Or you become a tech bro.
Yeah, that's right.
That's working out pretty well for a lot of them, actually.
That's true. Well, because they're good at the other part of it, which is the foraging piece. Which today's foraging is getting a job that you can bring home resources, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you got to be able to do both. If you look across all primates, the biggest brain species are the ones that have the hardest job to do, figuring out how to go get food. It's not the ones with the biggest social groups.
It's not.
It's not.
Oh, right. Because like homidrized baboons have bigger groups than.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean that in any one case, it's not a combination of things, right? You get these big trends, and then the one-off cases, like humans are the extreme one-off case. There's nothing else like us.
Right. So there's no silver bullet explanation. It's just like perhaps some combination of different.
Yeah. And, speaking of tech bros, I'll say that in my line of work, you get emails regularly. Dear Dr. Pontzer, I have figured it out. Here's how it all works together.
Yeah.
And here's the silver bullet thing that nobody's thought of. And it's just the one thing.
Yeah.
And the proportion of those emails from engineers and retired doctors is disproportionate to their numbers on the So there's something about that training of like seeing things in the kind of black and white ways.
Yes.
And I give them credit for spending time, thinking about this stuff. It's fun to think about and doing a good job. I'm not I don't want to be too harsh on it, but the sort of black and white feeling of how things work and knowing that, well, then it must just be this one thing. And it's never one thing, is it?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yes. That's very appealing to us. It's very comforting that there would be a single explanation and it would be definitive.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so our intelligence starts taking a leap. How is that graphed if you had to? Is it totally linear, or is it more of a hockey stick? Like when we go from Homo erectus to, I know Neanderthals had like a 1650 cc brain. It was enormous, bigger than ours. How gradual is that?
It's pretty. So the hockey stick is that the hockey stick inflection point is when you start hunting and gathering.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then from there on out, it's been just a climb.
It's just been a climb.
And it's one of those things where the way that we're figuring this out is we're going to the field, we're digging up fossils, we're measuring the skull sizes, right?
Yes.
I've had a chance to do some of that. That's really fun work. It's like putting the frames of a movie back together, only it's a 2 million year long movie, and you get, even if you had 100 frames, that's not enough.
Now, and also part of your work was you've done a lot of field work with the Hadza.
That's right. Hadza. Yeah.
Hadza. And they're in northern Tanzania?
That's exactly right, yeah.
Okay, and so what have you observed in them that seems to confirm what you learned on the biological side?
I mean, there's a fun story there. That the first project I did with them was measuring energy expenditures, metabolic rates, how many calories you burn every day.
For your book, Burn. Or at least this ended up in Burn.
It ended up in Burn. That's exactly right.
This is fascinating because I think we would all assume, what would you assume? this group that is walking all day long. They're averaging 19,000 steps for the dudes and 16,000 steps. And then they're busy all day long.
Yeah.
They don't domesticate any animals, any plants. They're doing it.
Right. Right.
They're active all day long. Like, and knowing like how much you think of yourself as burning like a couple thousand calories a day or something.
I hope.
I mean, that's what we're told. What would you think they're expending?
God, I mean, I guess at least I don't know enough about these types of things, but like double.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
that would be a
Guess.
very natural, common guess.
Yeah.
They're 5 times as active as me. Yeah, I would imagine
Right, at
double.
least
That's
double.
right.
Yeah.
But nobody had measured it. Lots of estimations about what that would look like. And, and it kind of feeds into questions in public health because maybe obesity is a big problem in the US because, well, we're not burning as many calories as we should be. Maybe we should be burning like hunter-gatherer level calories.
Yeah.
But we're not.
Right. And then that also gives rise to a whole paleo movement diet.
Oh my gosh. Yes, all of it. So on all of that, you realize at some point looking into it, I was like, wait, this is all based on nothing. These are just estimates, Like we don't really know any of this stuff. Let's go see.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
And so a couple of collaborators and I went and went to the, one of the guys I work with is Brian Wood. He's at UCLA now, your alma mater.
Okay, great. He must be a
Brian's
genius.
wonderful. Yes, of course. And, he's spent more nights in a Hadza camp in the past 10 years or 20 years than he's probably spent at home. Like he's there a lot. So, we go and we do this project and we're measuring energy expenditure. So we're measuring how many calories you burn every day, or, over about a week and a half. And we use this isotope tracking technique. It's like the best, coolest way to do it, gold standard, so that we know the numbers are real.
Could you explain that for a second? Because I found it fascinating. Maybe it's too nerdy, but
Yeah, I
you're
don't know
measuring
how you
carbon
I'm curious,
dioxide.
too.
I mean, I'll go as deep as we want to go.
I'm
I love it.
curious.
Let's put these people to sleep. Let's go.
Yeah, good, exactly. So it's called doubly labeled water. You drink like a half glass full of water. So water's H2O, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the H's are different, some of the O's are different. They're different versions of those elements. And you can track that if you took a water sample and put it in a mass spectrometer, that's a machine that would measure how much of those different elements are there. You can use them like tracers, basically. You drink some of that water, and over time, you're going to flush all the marked hydrogens out. Because you're peeing and you're breathing out water vapor. All the water you lose, the hydrogen is the marker of that.
Okay.
The oxygen you'll also lose as H2O, but it turns out you also lose oxygen that you drink. It gets mixed up with all the oxygen and carbon dioxide that you're making in your body, and you end up breathing out those oxygens as CO2 as well.
Right.
So those oxygen isotopes get lost 2 ways. The hydrogen isotope only gets lost 1 way. If you look at the difference in rate of loss, you can figure out how much carbon dioxide the body's making. That's calories per day.
Wow, that is cool.
Because carbon dioxide is the exhaust
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
of metabolic activity.
You cannot burn calories without making CO2. You
Yeah.
cannot make CO2 without burning calories. It's
Right.
like it's the measure.
Right.
That's so interesting.
And so we're not like,
It's not a Whoop or a Fitbit.
Yes. We're not estimating at all. This is a real measure. And in fact, I mean, we use this has been around since the 80s for humans. It got figured out in the 50s, but then we could use it for people in the 80s. And so people have been doing it since then, and it is the gold standard.
Have you done it to yourself? Because I would want to do. You have.
Yeah, that's
And what did you
interesting.
burn a day?
2,800 a day.
2,800
It was a pretty low
Are
energy
you
week for me.
active physically?
I am, and I was sick that week, so I was less so. I'm not like bedridden, but I wasn't running as
So
much
you're
as I like
probably
to.
more like 3,000 a day.
Typical American male burns 3,000 calories a day.
Okay.
Typical American woman is going to burn 2,400 calories a day.
Okay.
So if I had to
Just
guess mine,
Because you're lazy.
if I had to guess, that's what you're burning.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not lazy.
I know the real answer.
What's the real answer?
The only real relation hardcore is your non-fat mass. So
Yes.
your muscle and your organs. As you plot that and you plot calorie consumption, it's spot on. When we're observing the difference between males and females, all we're really observing is the difference in our body composition. That men have
Exactly.
X amount. Well, in this case, 24,
Yeah.
divided by 3,000.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
That's probably the exact difference in body mass,
Yeah,
non-fat
interesting.
body mass.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, so back to the Hadza. So we go there, we do this study. We lived in Hadza land for a summer. It's a big camping trip with scientific equipment.
Yeah.
Doing these measurements, hanging out, following, going on hunts, going on gathering outings, all these. It's really amazing.
Yeah, is it
to live with.
fun?
It's so fun.
It's fun, yeah.
And the people are just, generous, wonderful folks.
Bow and arrow, and what are they getting? Gazelles and stuff?
It's your typical sort of savanna. If you picture, National Geographic savanna,
Yeah.
that's it. Zebra, giraffe.
Yeah. Did you eat some zebra?
I've had different animal foods over the year, whatever they would bring home. I've had zebra.
Do you have a favorite?
No, I mean,
None of it tastes as good as a cow. huh?
Hadza cuisine is not really a thing.
It's not fatty, any of those animals.
A, and B, it's just the meat.
Yeah, there's no
like,
seasonings.
sauce.
There's no salt. There's
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, very little salt and
Yeah.
very little anything else.
No dry rub.
No, and then if you eat a zebra, if they kill a zebra, you can't eat a zebra in one day.
Right.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Even camp can't eat a zebra in a day.
Right.
And so they eat what they can right then, and then they bring all the meat home and they cut it into strips and they hang it from the trees, and the camp just smells. So the camp is like a camp is about 12 or 20, well, sometimes it's even smaller, but let's say a dozen grass houses, in a nice part of the savannah. And the whole camp just kind of smells like a butcher's shop for a week.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have any elevated rates of, probably less, of like animal-borne bacteria?
E.
and stuff?
coli.
It isn't like rampant, I
Right.
don't know. I don't know that that's been studied. Like, I'm sure that any of these subsistence groups, if you look at hunter-gatherers, you look at farmers, parasites are like a part of life. And so I'm sure they have them more than I hope us three have them. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, it's not like it doesn't sort of affect their day to day.
So this was kind of, I read this result and I found it quite depressing.
Oh, right. So we haven't got to the result yet. So we get the numbers. We take the samples home. They get analyzed at a lab at Baylor. He's like internationally leading guy in this technique. Sends me the data back. And I'm just so excited about it because we're going to find out they're going to be burning double the calories. It's going to be so cool to see.
Yeah.
And nope, it's the same.
It's the same.
So they, as getting more activity in a day than a typical American gets in a week, are burning the same number of calories every day as the American. It's a total shocker, right? And it was like, oh my God. And as a scientist, that's the best.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the guy, Bill Wong, who's the one who did it. I said, Bill, did we screw it up?
Yeah, this can't be right.
And he said, no, the data, because there's internal checks they can do. Data look great. And I said, okay. And so then what's going on? And he goes, well, they're more efficient. We see this sometimes. They're more efficient. And I go, oh, thank God. Somebody understands what's going on here.
Yes.
And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, they burn fewer calories than you thought they would. Like, well, that's not an explanation.
Yeah.
Oh my
And so
God.
that's been the last 15 years of my career has been like, a big part of it has been trying to understand this phenomenon because it's not just them. We've done this in other cultures. We've done this in other species. And activity doesn't sort of link up with your daily expenditure in the kind of simple way that people think it does.
But it doesn't reject the hard, fast rules, calories in, calories out.
Not at all.
Yes,
No, what it tells
you're
you.
embracing that. Like
Yes.
if you eat 2,000 calories and you only burn 1,000, you will have a
Yes.
surplus turned into fat.
100%.
Vice
That's
versa,
exactly
the
right.
other way. So how do you make it jive within that system?
I think what it does is it helps explain why people have such trouble doing the calories in, calories out thing.
Yes.
Because it is actually, first of all, people are really just, it's hard to know how many calories you're eating.
Sure.
And then secondly, it's very hard to know how many calories you're burning because it isn't just how active you are.
Right.
It turns out.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Now it's like, well, yeah, it's calories in, calories out, but good luck tracking either of those things.
Yeah.
Right. And so it sort of sends you back to square one of like, how do I find a way to do this to track if I'm really worried about diet and diet's the best way to handle your weight, which is true, then okay, then how do I kind of find a way to do that? Because,
Is it because they are expending so much energy that the body is figuring out a way to conserve the
Yes.
oxygen?
It's figuring out a way to conserve energy on other things.
Okay.
So we did it, when we were there, we brought it this sort of briefcase-based respirometry system where you can put a mask on a person, it's hooked up to a little computer you wear on a chest harness, and they could walk around camp. We can measure how many calories they burn to walk. Mm-hmm. That's the same. So the activity costs aren't lower.
Right.
Right? So they are really active. They're burning tons of calories on the activity. There's no secrets there.
Okay.
The fact that the total number of calories a day is no different than everybody else means there has to be something else going on in all the other things that your body's doing, saving energy here or there, squirreling it away.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. So an analogy to that would be really physically active people here in the States versus inactive people.
Yeah.
Right.
When we look at them, what we notice is people who are really physically active, They have less inflammation. Well, what's that? Your immune system isn't as active. Oh, wait, okay, so we're saving some calories there maybe. Your reproductive hormones aren't as sky high. They're actually really high in the sedentary Americans versus like the Hadza, for example.
Or this is why you have Olympic athletes that don't get their period for
Yes, that's the
3
extreme of
years.
it. That's the extreme of it. But on the way there's a very healthy point where your estrogen levels might not be as high as somebody who's sedentary, and maybe that's a good thing.
All signs point to that is a good
Yes,
thing.
yes.
Yeah.
Stress reactivity. If you are an athlete, or even just if you just exercise regularly, if I scare you, your heart rate's going to go up, but less. You're going to have a smaller stress response. And if you measure how much cortisol you make all day or how much epinephrine your body makes all day, it's less if you are physically active.
Yeah.
Now, have we gotten good at monitoring how many calories the brain is consuming while intensely active? Like I have to imagine if you're like crunching numbers and computing, that activity is going to burn more calories than watching TV.
Yeah, it's kind of a disappointing amount. They do these tests where they have people play like chess against a game it's tuned just to be just a little bit better than them.
Okay,
So they're
great.
working their asses off.
Yeah.
And they're struggling, and they always, they lose anyway. It must be very frustrating. And he's like 4 calories an hour. It's nothing. It's like a couple M&Ms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like you could say this brain economy is a kind of one-to-one to this physical activity.
Yeah, probably not. Probably the brain is one of the pieces that's not getting touched, right? You can't really mess with it. And that's because most of what your brain is doing is completely off of your radar.
Right.
It's all the organizational stuff, housekeeping stuff. I mean, that's most of brain work.
What you found is that there's a pretty narrow margin that the body wants to operate in metabolically.
Yeah, it's working to keep you within a narrow range. Sometimes this gets misinterpreted like, oh, there's no effective exercise at all. No, there can be sometimes you can see it.
Well, I've experienced it. So that's where I'm wrestling with, like, as I read this stuff, I'm like, well, no, I up my thing and I've had all the results one would expect.
Yeah, so for certainly for a few, like if you start an exercise program tomorrow, it's going to take a while for your body to adjust. So for that first couple of weeks, you haven't seen the adjustment yet. So you really are burning the extra calories that you expect to burn.
And the body hasn't found its way to homeostasis yet.
That's right.
But if you're doing a lot of weight training, we get into this non-fat body mass, or we are going to see a direct result to your metabolism.
Yeah, so I should say that all these, when we say no more calories than somebody else, those are all sort of size-adjusted comparisons, right? Because it doesn't make any sense for me to say that you and Monica burn the same number of calories. Obviously, it's going to be different because of the size difference.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when we do these population comparisons, we don't want to just compare sizes across. We want to compare size corrected, adjusted for size.
Yeah.
And so that's right. If you build more muscle, for example, then you'll burn more calories just because you are bigger.
Yeah, your body can only adjust so much.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like these bodybuilders that are like walking around at 300 pounds of lean muscle, their body's not going to hit a homeostasis where they only consume 3,000 calories a day.
They'll go up. Now, so that's a fun one. One of the other challenge to this idea is like, well, what about the Tour de France?
Yes.
Right? You're burning 8,000 calories a day for the
8,000 calories
It's
a day.
some amount.
I did the math really quick. Can I tell it to you? Because it was great. So they're doing 7,000 to 8,000 calories a day for 3 weeks. So 21 days straight. That's 150,000 calories in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That would be 75 days of normal caloric output in 21 days. The body can't adjust to that, right? It's going to need those 9,000
That's right.
calories.
So like we know that there are periods the body can, at least for some short-term time, really crank it up.
Yeah.
And we see that with those guys. And we see it with
pregnancy, interesting. That you compare it
so
to.
that's the fun thing. So the ceiling kind of comes down, and it's analogous to you can sprint for 10 seconds or you can jog for an hour, right? You can the sprint in this scenario is the Tour de France, which isn't, and the jog is, how hard can you push yourself for 6, 7, 8, 9 months? And the hardest thing you can do for 9 months is pregnancy, right? So this sort of this metabolic, we call it a metabolic ceiling. The total limit to how many calories your body can possibly burn is higher for a short-term thing, but gets progressively lower and kind of squeezes down to about 2.5 times your basal metabolic rate.
I guess I'm just curious how much it goes up during pregnancy.
It goes up maybe 20, 30%, but that's because of the size change.
Yeah. It's all proportional.
That's
you're
right.
saying.
It remains proportional.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun to think about.
So there's no hacking. Like when your heart rate's above 150,
Yeah.
there's no hacking there. Your body's never going to adjust to that.
Not,
Or is
no,
it?
Not in the moment, surely, no.
Right.
You're burning those calories right then, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so even if you do it for a prolonged period of time, your body's never going to be at 150 beats per minute and only burning the amount of calories one would burn at 80 beats.
No, that's right. That's right. What's happening, the adjustment seems to be happening kind of in the other times, right?
The non-exercise moments.
Yes, exactly.
Do you think you can feel that?
Well, yeah. 'Cause, I mean, like the stress response, for example, I think you can feel that.
Right.
I think who knows how that's affecting the brain exactly, but I think the mood impacts. I think, you're seeing that kind of regulation that's happening from exercise touches everything.
Yeah, we
this
know
is
it's
fun.
directly related, but we've never had a great explanation for why.
Yeah.
My explanation was always like, we were designed to go do physical activity and get a little reward.
Yeah.
A serotonin reward. And in the absence of any of that physical activity, the brain's like, I'm not giving you that until, so that was always my explanation. But this one's interesting
Yeah.
and compelling as well, which is just like, we don't have the energy to do that.
Right. Yeah. And, I think if people, what I would like to see people think about exercise in a different way, it's not just about putting your foot on the gas pedal and raising the calories burned. It can do that in a short term and your body's going to adjust and juggle the calories. Don't worry so much about the calories. What the exercise is doing is kind of re-regulating how all the other systems work.
Yeah.
Because they're all linked. So if I start exercising more, I'm going to affect all my other systems in good ways.
Yeah, you say it kind of like calibrates and puts in harmony all these different systems.
Yeah, it's like the rhythm section.
rhythm section. Yeah.
But so instead of working out, you could just get scared a lot.
Oh yeah, you
And
could pay
then
someone
that
to
would
follow
that
you.
would have the same output.
You need to drink the isotope though, so we know exactly. Like, is it 80
I'll do
calories
this
per
research.
scare? Or?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I actually brought with me. Now, wouldn't that be amazing if you could get like a can of DLW, like crack it open, isotope water?
I'm dying to
Oh my
know how
God, that'd
many
be great.
calories I burn.
Wait, so like people who have high anxiety or panic, stress and stuff,
Yeah.
do they burn more calories just being anxious?
Yes.
That's wild.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, it's a fun set of studies done in the 90s. You have somebody just kind of hang out and relax. They're supposed to be totally, the best part is, if you don't even have to scare them. You get them when everybody thinks that they're relaxed.
Right.
But then you have them do this survey afterwards about like, whatever the scale is about how anxious you are in general.
Yeah.
And people who are pinned out on being anxious have higher expenditures just resting. Their body is just
Wow.
They
going.
probably have a higher resting heart rate and
Yeah, their
cortisol.
body's
Yeah, the
dealing
whole
with
thing.
a lot.
The whole thing. Yeah.
Okay, so really quick, blast paleo, because this is on the surface something that seems really logical to people. So the premise of paleo is during the Paleolithic era, we lived a very certain way. We only ate, non-processed vegetables and meat. It was a low carb, high protein diet, and this is people's religion. But what did you find with the Hadza?
Yeah, they don't eat a paleo diet, which is hilarious because they're actually hunting and gathering.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is no single one diet that hunter-gatherers eat. If you look across the globe, you'll find people on any mix of animal and plant foods, across time, across space, you see it, anything.
Yeah.
So the paleo diet is whatever's around.
Yeah.
In reality.
In reality.
Yes,
The
yes.
real paleo diet would be whatever is there.
Yeah. 100% fish in some
Yes.
cases.
Yes. And if you go, and so the Hadza have actually quite a lot of carbs in their diet. And we see that again and again and again. This idea that there's the only way to be paleo or that the true paleo is low carb. Sorry, that's not really true.
Yeah, these tubers are very starchy.
They're very starchy. And when it's not tubers, it's berries. And when it's not tubers and berries, it's honey.
There we go. Yeah, you said
So
10 to
much
20% of their
Yes.
calories are straight honey.
Yes.
Fucking water and
Yum.
sugar.
Yeah. And people love, people think that honey's magical and it is kind of wonderful, but it's not. It's just sugar and water,
Yeah.
man. It's just sugar
I
and
hate to
water.
break it to you. It is sugar and water. Tell us about what is unique about us humans' heart and air supply.
Oh,
How did
that's
this
fun.
system come about and what's unique about it?
Well, you're kind of your typical mammal setup for hearts and lungs, right? You have a 4-chambered heart. That's all mammals got that.
Okay.
Our lungs are driven by a diaphragm, the muscle below your lungs that kind of pushes them out and brings air in and pushes air out. That's all the same. But what we've done is we've taken your larynx, that's the little voice box, little cartilage cup that you can feel in your throat, and we've brought it down in our necks low. And that's because of the way that we've been adapted to speak, right? So very appropriate discussion for this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
all this right here, we're all making air sound waves at you,
Yeah.
and you're talking, that means something to you. That's crazy, first of all.
Right.
No, I know, yeah. Transferring what's in your brain to my
language,
brain with airwaves.
But to get this range of sounds, and particularly the vowel range, A, I, O, U's, right? You need to have a vocal tract that has kind of two components, a vertical part that comes up out of your throat, and then a horizontal component that comes out of your mouth. And you shape those different things separately to make different sounds. By taking your larynx and putting it down here in your throat, now you can choke. That's dumb.
Oh, so, okay, so that's a new...
Yes. So a
bug in the
chimpanzee,
system.
other primates, they have it up high, right? They have it, their larynx is up almost kind of behind their nose. It's up real high. And so the likelihood of them swallowing something and it gets dumped into their lungs, way less.
God, I experience this almost daily.
Choking.
I'm eating and I take a deep breath for some reason. I suck some food in there and
Yeah.
I'm dealing with it for 30 minutes.
An even cooler, deeper history, which is that, have you ever wondered why food and air go in the same place?
Yeah, it's a bad design.
Yeah.
It's a bad design in general, but you know what it is? Because when we were fish, there was a little air pouch called a swim bladder that helps fish stay buoyant. You ever wonder how they stay upright and know how deep or shallow to be?
Yeah.
It's because they can adjust how much air is in this swim bladder. And for them, there's no it's not lungs. It's just a little pocket of little pouch. But then as vertebrates move onto land, that becomes lungs. That's the structure that gets all,
my God.
vascularized. And isn't that fun? Because gills are no good anymore, right?
Yeah.
And now we're stuck with this dumb thing where even embryologically, you see the gut tube form, and then a little pouch grows out of your guts, and that's your lungs.
Wow.
And it all connects out to your mouth, right?
Right.
And now that we want to have this vocal communication, and there's been such strong selection on that even though thousands of people die in the United States alone, die every year from choking.
Yeah.
It's a big cost.
Sure.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
But this is so valuable that evolution said,
Worth it.
Still
was
will
worth
be. The net
Worth it.
result will be.
yes.
a
And that
bigger-
result was still more kids having this,
Yeah.
even with the risk of dying. Isn't that
Oh
crazy?
my God.
Yeah.
The body's full of these wonderful things.
So it had nothing to do with our uprightness, because I could also imagine when you're quadrupedal, your orientation is all different.
So that ties into when you run, you can run and talk, right? And you can run and kind of breathe in different schedules. If you ever have some fun with this, you can take a breath in every 2 steps and out every 2 steps, or in every step and out every step, or in every 3 and out, depending on your pace.
Right.
You can change that up.
Yeah.
A quadruped that's sprinting can't do that because every time its front feet hit the ground, its guts slosh forward, push the air out
Expel the
out of
air.
its lungs, and then every time it stretches back out, they slushes back and they pull
my
air back in.
God. That is
So
wild.
there's this idea that's actually my PhD advisor kind of built on this idea. It's an old idea that goes back to the 80s, that being bipedal made it easier for us to become endurance runners that could run down game. Because there are some cultures even to today that will run an animal to exhaustion. That's how they hunt.
Like wolves.
Yeah, exactly. And that, we can kind of run at all these different speeds and still be able to breathe fine. Whereas if you are a quadruped, the range of speeds that you're able to maintain and still be able to breathe effectively is much more limited. And so you can kind of push these. Anyway, that's the idea.
Now, are there differences within populations or no?
About what?
Our air supply in our heart.
So you don't see it in the vocal tract and that kind of thing, but what you see is there's a bit player in this whole system, which is the spleen. Okay. Monica, do you know what the spleen does? Most people don't.
No, I just know it can explode if you have mono.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's mostly like an immune system organ. It kind of tracks what's going on immune system wise. But it kind of seems like expendable. Maybe you can even get it removed. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
It also acts as a reserve tank for red blood cells.
Oh.
And so there are people people who live at altitude and are always kind of oxygen starved. Their spleens get a little bit bigger because it becomes this extra reserve red blood cell thing for their blood to. Your red blood cells are the ones that carry oxygen.
Your hemoglobin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's this amazing case that was kind of documented a couple, maybe 2010 or so. There's a population of folks called the Sama. You hear them written about as the Bajau as well, but I think they prefer to be called. They call themselves the Sama.
Okay.
And they are basically hunter-gatherers in the ocean. They spend their lives on
What
boats.
ocean?
This is South Pacific.
Okay.
So Southeast Asia, the Philippines and islands up into Indonesia now, they forage underwater. So they just kind of free dive. There's no scuba or anything like that. They're just holding their breath.
Yeah.
And you can imagine in that very particular population, there was strong selection for, can you hold your breath a little bit longer?
Yeah.
And are you less likely to drown because you push it too far?
Yeah.
And in those folks, the gene variants that build a bigger spleen have been favored.
Okay.
And now they have bigger spleens on average.
On
right?
what order? Like
You're
30% bigger or?
Yeah, it's something like that's not
Okay.
double.
Right,
surely.
right. It's not double. Okay.
But it's just enough, right? And evolution is always working on the margins like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that so cool? But it's a nice example of, and it's something I try to cover when I teach this stuff, but also in the book. People are always looking for adaptive stories about why this population is different than that one. Usually, there's nothing there. Usually, the selection pressures are kind of the same, like a heart and lungs.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same for everybody.
Right.
And it's only in these really small particular cases, like underwater foraging, like living at altitude, where you have, because think what has to happen. You have to have selection pressures be stable for long enough and really localized that selection, evolution will say, yes, these particular gene variants now are an advantage and stably so.
Yeah.
So that now things change. Most of what we see when we look across populations is kind of just slush and slop and noise.
Right. And maybe not even consistent long enough for it to have a big impact.
Exactly.
Okay. What about how we eat? I mean, we're kind of talking about it already.
Yeah.
But
So people are really good at eating whatever's around. You can tell from our teeth and our guts, sort of broadly speaking, that we're ready for a high quality diet. Like we don't have to spend hours chewing grass, obviously, right? We're good at stuff that's energy dense. Cooking has actually changed our bodies completely.
a common argument from vegetarians is like, look at our mouth. It doesn't resemble a true omnivore's mouth. Right. And they're leaving out that's because we cook.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that makes energy sort of in the food easier to get at, which ends up meaning that you get more calories per bite and it's easier to chew and all these things. That's right.
And you don't need the teeth.
So think about, this is a fun one too. We talked about how, once kind of cultural complexity gets out of hand and kind of snowballs, now the brain is playing catch up. You're born trying to fill the brain with all the things that you learn. So you have this cultural inheritance, in other words. We call it the dual inheritance sometimes. You've got your DNA inheritance. We've also got this cultural inheritance that's just as important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those things have to link up. Case in point with cooking. There's no gene for fire. Yeah. There's no genetic variant for fire. But our bodies need cooked food.
Yes.
So the biological inheritance is a digestive tract that requires cooked food, actually. You can't, like raw foodists have a hard time even today with the weird, amazingly easy to digest foods you get in the supermarket.
Yeah.
You could never be a raw foodist on wild foods.
Right.
It wouldn't work.
Right.
So our bodies need cooked food, and that how to cook and how to make fire is completely culturally inherited.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't come out knowing how to start a fire.
That's right. And so if you don't put those things together, you're done. Isn't that fun?
I want to earmark this for the very end, get off book a little bit. But yes, this is like, I read Behave. I don't know if you read Sapolsky's book,
I've read Sapolsky. I've read parts of Behave. Yeah.
But that one does a really great job of the nature-nurture debate is really a false dichotomy. You can look so many times where they're so interwoven, you can't really even make some distinction between which is which.
Right.
Which weirdly and funnily, and that's what I want to earmark, like kind of brings back Lamarckian biology a little bit. But let's earmark that.
Okay.
That would be, that's not necessarily about the book, but it's a fascinating thing to think about now.
Totally.
How about muscle and bone?
I mean, there's nothing that's more kind of plastic and adaptable than your muscles, right? I mean, you can change sizes and even change kind of fiber types if you're slow twitch or fast twitch, power or endurance. That's a really flexible system. And I think is another case where if all humans were just born to be just one kind of athlete, just an endurance or just a power kind of thing, it wouldn't work because cultures change. Yeah. The jobs you have to do change too quickly. So evolution has to solve that problem by creating flexibility and creating adaptability. So over the course of a lifetime, if you grow up someplace you're doing a lot of running, you'll get good at that. You grow up somewhere where you're working with your upper body, farming or canoeing, you'll get good at that. Like you see examples of all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Olympics is the best place to observe this.
I love it, right?
Right?
Yeah.
You're like, look at a power lifter, look at the ultra marathoner, look at the sprinter. Every sprinter looks the same. Every beach volleyballist looks the same.
That's it. Yeah.
And they're all the same species with the same, 99.9%
That's right.
of the same DNA.
That's right.
And look how fucking flexible it is.
Humans are incredibly just inherently diverse the way that we're built. Within population, like just look around, right?
Yeah.
Any population, you're going to find the big people and the small people and the strong people and the less, the thin people. And you find all of it everywhere.
Right.
And I think that is true. Humans are kind of inherently more variable. But, I think that also gets back to this issue of every lion has to be the best lion it can be. And there's a narrow prescripted way of how that's going to work for them to be a successful adult. In a human society, even a hunting and gathering society, where the career options are more limited than maybe here, you're still going to see a variety of ways that are successful to be an adult.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to focus on this, or
You can
that's
be a
your niche.
shaman. You
all
can
these
be-
things.
yeah.
And so I think there's sort of more breadth of possibility there than in other species.
I want to go straight to environmental protection. Because I would imagine many people don't even know why some people are white and some people are black.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, I think they've observed that, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they would necessarily know. So,
The molecule that makes skin dark is a molecule called melanin. You've got these really cool cells that start off in this very special part of the embryo that migrate into your skin. And those cells make melanin. That's their job. And the more they make, the darker you are. And so we all make it. And if you make
guys,
more of it,
you're just
less. We're
not
melanin
making a
challenged.
lot.
we're lazy melanin. You
Yeah.
can say.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. I feel it. On a sunny day, I feel it.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
But even the baseline's variable, right? Because
That's it. That's right. So, but to your point, if we're an African species, we know that 300,000 years ago, that's where we all were. And melanin is this natural sunblock. You see it, more melanin, darker skin in populations that have more ultraviolet light exposure. And it's because ultraviolet light is good because it helps you make vitamin D, but it's bad because it blows up this molecule called folate, which you need to make DNA.
Okay.
Right? You are making 2 miles of DNA every second or something like that.
Oh,
it's
wow.
crazy. Because your cells are
Really?
dividing, you got to make all these.
Yeah.
And so if you don't make that right, if there's
There's
not
no mitosis.
that's a problem. There's no mitosis, or there's cancers,
Yeah.
or if you are pregnant and you are building a fetus,
Yeah.
there's a lot of DNA being made there. And
Right.
if that doesn't work out, that's not good, obviously.
So you need the exact right amount of
Yes.
UV.
Yeah. You want to make vitamin D, you want to protect your DNA. And
Okay.
that balance is why if you're at a high sunlight area, you're going to be inherently adapted to be darker. Populations farther away are going to be adapted to be lighter and get more of that UV because you sort of, that's the other part of the seesaw is
Yeah,
where you
you
end up.
need
So just to remind people about the geology, so Africa is on the equator, or where
right.
most of the humans come from. So the sun is always in the same spot in the sky. It's always up and down for 12 hours. This is like,
it's always intense.
yes.
Yeah.
You're out on the savannah. There's not a lot of cover. You're not in a forest,
That's right.
So as people move north,
The balance shifts, right?
so there's less light, there's less UV, there's less opportunity to make vitamin D. And then the skin gets
Lighter, right?
so that it can absorb.
Yeah, so there's like 100 and some genes that work together to kind of figure out how much melanin you're going to make.
Okay.
You can imagine there's variants of those. We all have those 150 genes, but your versions might be different than mine.
Yeah.
And so the versions that help make more melanin, those are going to be successful in high UV places like Africa. As you
India.
move north, the variants that make you a little bit lighter, all of a sudden that's an advantage.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And we see those variants get selected for to be lighter, and then people move back into more tropical areas with higher sunlight intensity, and we see the darker skin variants come back into being more
Yeah.
advanced.
Well, that's where it gets Lamarckian. So my
Yeah.
question to you is, do we have every ingredient at the disposal and we are turning on and turning off certain things? Like that's where this weird interplay between how we've thought of Darwinian evolution, and now we're starting to see like, well, no, we kind of have a lot of genes that are just not activated.
That would, in my mind, that says that you, Dax, could
Be black.
Be black.
Right. I can't.
No.
Right.
But in our population,
Yeah.
right, in the population of any population,
Yeah.
you will find all of the variants available. That's one of the big discoveries of modern genetics, is that those variants, the same variants that make some people darker, some people lighter, they're all there in the population.
Even if no one's black?
Potentially so, because what'll happen is they'll just be much lower frequency.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe only 5% of people have, for one gene, have the variant that would make you darker skin.
Yeah.
And since it's a low frequency, it's unlikely they're going to have that variant and the other variant that helps and the other variant that helps
Right.
and the other variant that helps that all together
Right.
give you darker skin.
Okay.
Right? But now let's make selection favor darker skin.
Yeah.
Well, now bit by bit, you kind of reassemble the frequency. So you make those alleles more
Yeah,
frequent.
the two darker
Yeah.
kids of the 100 kids survived
do a
and they
little
made
bit
it.
better.
And one had a third of this recipe and another had a third. And now
Yeah.
we're 2/3 of the way there. And
Yeah. So Lamarck would say anybody in their own lifetime can achieve that change.
Right.
That's not right.
Yeah.
But what
Right.
is right is that any population over enough time could end up kind
Yeah.
of going back and forth on these
That's
traits.
really
I guess I might be misunderstanding it, but I guess what Darwin was missing was the epigenome.
So he also had no idea about genes, and he thought that traits mixed like paints mix.
Right.
And if you do
Yeah.
that, then you just get blah, right? You don't get-
recessive
Yeah.
and dominant.
Yeah, he didn't have any idea
Right.
about that. So he was out to lunch on how any of genetics works.
But the epigenome, which is hovering above your DNA and deciding
Yes.
what RNA is going to send out, that's making a
That's a big factor too.
and it's not, we have all, this is where I get into the recipe thing, right?
Yeah.
With this enormous amount of detailed data for the epigenome to choose to use or not use. And
Yes.
there's a lot going on there.
So whatever genes you inherited from mom and dad, they're not all turned on all the time.
yeah.
Right.
Right.
And this is where nature really and nurture start
Yes.
really mingling, right?
Yes. And this has been a big breakthrough in the last 15, 20 years of just how this works. From the moment you're born, and maybe even before you're born,
Right.
which is crazy.
Mom's uterus.
Yes.
Yeah. Passed on.
You are listening, you're paying attention. And yes, you have all these genes from mom and dad, but you're not going to use them all.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to pick which ones you use. And then that creates diversity too.
Now, I've heard male pattern baldness is an adaptation of going into northern climates as well, because you were standing.
See, I
your
thought it was a
butt-
sign of prowess and obvious.
Yeah, I like to think so. Is male pattern baldness an adaptation to receive more vitamin D from the top of your head?
I doubt it. And here's why.
Oh, great.
That extra little patch isn't doing you a whole lot of good, first of all. I don't think that's like
but if you
measurable.
operate all day,
Yeah, but you're also not wearing as many clothes all day, probably, and you're outside the entire day. You probably
Okay.
get plenty of exposure anyhow.
okay, yeah, you're probably
And
not wearing
then
a long sleeve shirt.
here's who really needs the vitamin D is mom.
So why is her hair not falling
Exactly.
out? Okay.
So
Knock on wood.
How do we explain male pattern baldness, though? Is there an armchair theory on it?
So this is where I would push back and say, let's be sure that we're looking at an adaptation and not just a tolerated bit of noise. Right? Skull shape's a great example of this. Back in the bad old eugenics days, people were measuring the skull shapes of Eastern Europeans
Yeah,
and
facial
Asians,
proximity.
all these things,
Yeah.
right? And they're trying to figure out who's a good person and who's a bad person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was all really ugly.
Guess
shit.
who was great? Aryans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you do that analysis today, and you say, well, what if rather than assuming that I'm looking at selection favoring that skull shape here and this skull shape there, what if my model is, well, evolution doesn't care. It doesn't affect how you survive. It doesn't affect how many babies you have.
Right. There's no real force acting on this.
So what if the model is, well, it's just noise, and we know what noise should look like. Noise should look like gray, screen noise, right? It's just like no real pattern to
Inconsistent.
it. Inconsistent to it. And there's a very clear mathematical test you can make for that. And sure enough, if you look at skull shapes across the globe, it's noise.
They don't mean anything.
They don't mean anything.
So let's put a real fine point on this, because what I learned in anthro and what I've repeated to a lot of people is the categorizing of people by race
Oh, yeah.
is just simply scientifically very, very weak. In that, the example that was given to me in anthro is like, there are populations within Africa that have more genetic similarity with populations in Ireland
Yep.
than they do with a neighboring tribe.
Yep.
So why on earth would you categorize these people by this thing that is the least telling and least dynamic and everything? This is just like, as you said, 150 alleles or something. That means nothing in the grand scope of things.
Right.
If you really wanted to categorize and group people, we just know that would be about the worst way to do it, to get any consistency.
That's exactly right. And the reason why do we do it is because we seem to be inherently built to like to have in-groups, out-groups.
Yeah.
Yes.
We want to do that.
Yeah.
And we're visual primates, man.
Yes.
So we pick something visual.
It's
I think
easy.
it's kind of inherent. Yeah, it's inherent in the way that our brains are built to go that way.
Yes.
So it's not a surprise, but that doesn't make it right. It's a pretty crap way to do it. as you
Yeah.
say.
It just means nothing if you were looking at it scientifically.
Yeah, that's right. But what's crazy to me is that's still how we do it, not just sort of casually having a conversation. It's how you doctors do it.
Yeah.
Doctors are still doing this race-based view. That's how they're trained.
Yeah.
About, you come into the doctor's office, you get a medical test, and how I interpret that test is through a lens of if you're black, if you're white, if you're Asian.
You give the exact examples in the book because I was like, oh, this is fascinating.
There's a thing called an EGFR, estimated glomerular filtration. It's how your kidneys are doing.
Okay.
It's a blood test. I get a blood test. I run it through this analysis. I get a number, and that's your EGFR. Well, okay, is it good or is it bad? Well, it depends. If I'm a doctor and I'm interpreting that number, I ask, is the patient black or is the patient white?
Right.
That's fucking crazy because it has nothing to do. Their kidney function has nothing to do with that.
Okay, but let me attempt to push back, and maybe you'll correct me in this.
Yeah.
So one thing I learned along the way, which I found very fascinating, is that African Americans, not black people across the globe, but African Americans have a very elevated rate of hypertension.
Oh.
And so the question is how they get this rate of hypertension.
Yeah.
And what people have figured out is that when the people in Africa were kidnapped, they were first marched to West Africa, most of them, to get put on boats to be brought to America. Half of those people died of dehydration on that walk. So the people that made it to the boat had a really high salinity count or an asymmetrical salinity count. They were able to hold on to the salt in their body. Then they put them on boats. Half those people died of dehydration. So the people that landed here had this extreme force case of natural selection where a high salinity rate was beneficial to survival. We assume for half a second that was true.
Yeah.
And I'm a doctor and I measure the salinity count of someone's body and I see that it's elevated. Well, what I'm really trying to do is decide, is it elevated relative to his peers or her in-group? Because that's really what's going to be significant. Is this person running an outside risk, even given their elevated disposition? That would be relevant, no?
Again, at least there's a plausible mechanism there. To push back specifically on that one, if that were true, if that sort of bottleneck with the slave trade were what was happening, we would see that in the genes that we know are related to hypertension risk. But we don't see that.
You don't?
No. And so there is no evidence that is really what's going on. And also, you can take people whose families are, black families who are not, descendants of the slave trade,
Right.
but they grow up in America where there is racism.
Yeah.
And they have the effects of that. So race becomes biological.
Meaning if someone flew from Nigeria here
Yes.
Tomorrow,
Right.
within some time they would have the predictable.
Yes, that's right. So usually there's not even a story as to why. At least that one has a story.
Yeah. It seems extremely plausible to me. People dying of dehydration. I'm certain they weren't handing out water.
Let's do more of the heart rate thing. So through the 80s and 90s, it was thought that black folks in America were just genetically predisposed to heart disease.
Right.
And that's just it. This is how it is.
Accept it.
Accept it.
Move on.
And now we know that if you study folks that are black, and even if they're descendants of the slave trade, but they aren't in the United States exposed to structural racism, they actually don't have hypertension. That isn't a thing that all of the folks have downstream.
It's a stress thing.
It's a stress thing.
Yeah.
Another great example, Native Americans in this country have, for all sorts of reasons, there are they also have hypertension and other sorts of bad heart outcomes.
Over-index and diabetes as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that because they're predisposed to it? Well, actually, if you also look at Native American groups in Bolivia, it's the same diaspora that came down. The same folks.
Yeah.
But they aren't living in a world that has
Oppressed them.
That oppressed them.
Yeah.
And so, guess what? Healthiest hearts in the world.
Wow.
In Bolivia. No signs of diabetes.
Really?
But it doesn't have to be. So it's true that in this environment, that gets triggered. That set of sequences, that happens.
Yeah.
But what we're looking at is an environmental influence. We're not looking at some inherent biological predisposition. And what gets dangerous is if you say, hey, that's just how those folks are.
Right.
It's what can we do? Throw up your hands.
Yeah.
That's a very different response than you say, holy shit, this group does have an issue.
We
with
got to
this.
fix it.
Maybe
fix
we
it.
can fix it. Yeah.
That's right. So the way that you understand how the body works ends up with big consequences for how you think about society.
Yeah,
How we deal with all
absolutely.
these problems. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's a fun one. My mother-in-law just went to get she had a DEXA scan done. She had her bone density checked. And they give you a bone density score, how mineralized your bones are.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was reading the report with her because she wanted, some input. And they had this thing at the end, your FRAX score, your FRAX likelihood, FRAX is this sort of algorithm they run the data through. Likelihood of major fracture in the next 10 years is X. And I thought, that's interesting. So I looked that up online. I'd heard about this and I wanted to look into it. You can go to the website, the FRAX website. Any doctor would use this. Her doctor used this.
Mm-hmm.
You put in the bone mineral density. You put in your BMI. So it knows how, are you frail? Are you, how are you doing?
Robust.
Robust. Are you?
Robustus.
What's age? Yeah. Good. Age, sex, all, the things that are relevant. And then it also asks you, what's your race?
Yeah.
Are you black? Are you Asian? Are you Caucasian? And I played with it. All of her data, she's a Chinese, she grew up in China.
Okay.
She's Asian. If you put in Asian versus Caucasian versus African-American, whatever, you could change your risk by double or half.
So that's 4X from the ceiling to the floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's totally bullshit. I mean, there's no way that's right. And the training set that they must have used this on was capturing something about the environment of folks, and that's affecting your likelihood.
Yes.
I wonder how this menopause data, because we had a menopause expert on.
Yeah.
She was saying Southeast Asians go through menopause on average like 6 years earlier.
Like around 47 or 48, which is earlier than.
Yeah, maybe
than
it wasn't 6, but it was
She just
several
gave
years.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if
Maybe.
that's a nature nurture sitch.
It would be interesting. Yeah. I don't think we have a great answer. We know why menopause sort of happens mechanistically, but we don't really know what triggers the exact timing, like why it's 47 versus 49.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a great handle on exactly
you run
why
out of
that's
eggs,
happening.
and the
Yeah,
body
but
starts
why-
ratcheting up all the.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if everyone
So why
starts
do you
with
run out of
so
eggs
many,
earlier
yeah,
or later?
exactly.
And why this time versus that time versus, like 5 years difference is a big difference. Why, who's early and who's later? I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so, the idea that your doctor is looking at the census box that you ticked
Yeah.
and making real decisions about how you're, it's like you go take your car to the mechanic and they say, well, we checked, the timing belt, we checked the brakes and whatever. And we think your car is going to be okay because it's blue. Like, well, what?
Well, hold on. Here we go.
What do you mean? So, we did this as a diagnostic test and here's the numbers, but then it looks pretty bad. But the good news is you've got a blue car. Well, what the hell are you talking about?
But we do this
we
with
shouldn't.
cars. If they come in and there's a rod knock at 100,000 miles and it's an American car, all systems go, this is what we expected. If you bring a Toyota in that's got a rod knock at 100,000, something's really weird.
Yeah.
Because we do know a Toyota will go 300,000 miles and the American car is going to go 150.
But that has to do with how the actual rod, how that actually is built.
Yeah.
It's the relevant
the quality
system.
of the
This is literally as dumb as saying two Toyotas,
all right.
one's have rod knock, one's black, one's white.
Because the numbers are exactly the numbers are there.
Yeah.
You won. You win. You're going to win most of these, but I'm going to keep going for it.
Boy.
Let's talk about dying, because here's my great curiosity is your body, your cells go through mitosis. They make an identical copy to themselves. So there's this great mystery. If they're making identical copies, how does aging even really happen?
Yeah.
Right. That's very weird. If we're making identical copies, how is aging happening?
Yep. Yeah.
So clearly something turns on or off and it starts making the cells differently, which is its own mystery, kind of how it's making identical but not identical copies.
Yeah.
My question is, why hasn't there ever been a mutation that just didn't turn that on? What would govern against that? Why couldn't that be a mutation that would have happened by now?
Well, first of all, some species are getting pretty close. So you've got bristlecone pine trees that live 5,000 years.
5,000 years.
Right?
Aren't there some sharks that are
You
like
go to 600 years, I think.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
600. I want to live to 600.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a
don't
wonderful
know.
story. It may be
a
apocryphal
long
about
time.
the guy who discovered the oldest living organism. You guys ever hear this story?
No.
That was lovely. Again, maybe apocryphal, but it's such a good story.
Yeah.
So it's a grad student in forestry, and he's trying to study bristlecone pine trees for some reason, and he wants to know. I think he's using the tree ring data to figure out environmental changes over time, deep time. He buys this special drill bit. This is in the 60s. He buys a special tubular drill bit that you can drill it into the tree, pull it out, and you get this core sample of the tree.
Yeah.
Look at the rings. And he's starting his new career. He's starting his research, and he gets up there into the forests out probably somewhere here in western U.S., and he starts drilling into a bristlecone pine, gets the thing stuck. And he's like, I can't finish my dissertation. I'm in real trouble. So he goes to the ranger station and says, this is what happened. I'm so sorry. Can I cut that one tree down, please, to get my core thing out? And the guy's like, yeah, fine. So he cuts it down.
Oh, my God.
And is a good scientist about it and saves a section of it and counts the rings later on and goes, oh my God, I just killed
The
oldest thing on the planet.
That was, it
That's
was known.
risky.
Yeah, it was a 5,000-year-old tree.
It
or
was
something
a
like that.
5,000-year-old tree.
I love when you go to near woods and they've got the cross section.
Yes.
And then fucking Jesus is on there.
Right.
On one of the
Yes,
rings.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
That's what, when people argue for like a 6,000-year-old history of the earth, the really serious anti-evolutionists, I think, man, we've got tree ring data older than that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's older than
Yeah.
that. But anyway,
Yeah, how do we age? What's unique about how we age? Obviously, we live quite long for a
we're the
primate.
oldest living primate for sure, and we do a better job not senescing. So there's been selection there to push that out, to push that process off. The standard story is that whatever the kind of damage that accumulates over time as we get older, your body has ways to fix that and repair it and put it back right. But that takes energy. And in the grand, everything's a trade-off. So if my body's spending energy keeping myself alive, well, then I'm not spending those calories on reproduction. And that's the balance of that. And really the reproduction part is what evolution really cares about.
Yeah.
How many copies of your genes do you get in the next generation?
Right.
So if you spent all of your energy on maintenance, then maybe you could live a lot longer, but that's not a great strategy because
Those genes won't make it to anybody.
yeah, exactly. So that's the standard story about why senescence happens. The mechanism of sort of exactly what's happening at the cellular level, what's breaking down, why, that still is, I think, up in the air. The stuff I find convincing too is that it's kind of entropy, right? That the wild number of chemical interactions and like that actually become kind of at that scale, physical interactions of molecules bouncing against molecules, things get wrecked and broken, and you have to put them back together. The idea would be that's why calorie restriction, for example, I don't know if you want to do it, but that's been the one thing shown in every species ever looked at. But even in like lab settings in mice, if you cut their calories by 20%, they live a lot longer.
Because your body starts eating all the junk that's
All the
accumulated.
scrap. That's right. It kind of cleans up the scrap and uses it.
Yeah.
And it just creates less exhaust, right? Less byproduct
Yes.
and less entropy.
Okay, so what do we need to know about living and how to live longer? And
Well, it's two games, right? You got to play two games to try to live forever. One, we know the rules to, and we can do something about, which is make sure you're exercising, eating a healthy diet, and we can talk a long time about what that would look like.
Yeah.
Don't smoke. Don't do things that we know lead to early.
Drinking, I hate to
Not
say it, but
great.
I think drinking
Yeah.
it's not
All
like-
these things that we know how to do, right? We know that. And that can push you through the kind of typical, falling off the sort of the cliff that happens to a lot of us as we get older. But then once you push into the kind of the 80s, 90s, then you got to hope you got good genes,
Yeah.
right? And that's why I think, there's who's the guy who's trying to live forever is Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
Is that the guy?
Yes.
And I don't know him and I wish him the best. But
Yeah. Did you watch the doc?
I actually heard the last thing I saw with him was him on Bill Maher's pod talking with him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I haven't watched the doc. I kind of keep up with him a little bit on social media because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I am aware of the routine, at least, some of it. He'll have a really good chance of winning the first game, right? He's not going to die of heart disease. That seems unlikely.
He's going to beat the four horsemen, as
Yes.
Tia would call them.
Yes. The preventable cancers, he's probably,
Metabolic disorders.
yes, he's going to do great. He's going to get to be 80 or 90 if I were to make a prediction. And then we're going to find out how mom and dad did,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, in the genes category.
Yeah.
This is where I'm very discouraged.
Yeah. So I don't know. The idea that you could have a life that's twice as long is, in my mind, the idea, it's the same as saying that I'm going to have a human that's twice as tall.
Right.
There are thousands of genes that all work together to make a human-sized human.
Yeah.
If you wanted to make a double-sized human,
Yeah.
imagine all the things you'd have to change. It wouldn't just be make sure you feed them better.
Yeah.
No, you've got to change like genetically how you build the thing.
Yes.
And so lifespan is just another trait, just like
Yeah.
that. So what I think we're seeing now is there's enough good nutrition around the world, enough good medicine around the world. Please get vaccinated, take your antibiotics, take the medicine you need to take. We can get you to 80, 90 relatively. I mean, that happens for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And even over 100. But then you start hitting the genetic limits of what's possible.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how I read it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll be happy to be wrong.
Do 2 minutes on vaccines.
Well, you know, as the measles outbreak right now in Texas, it lets us know they're an important public health thing to do.
Yeah.
The vaccination schedule is critically important to keep. There's a reason all those are in there. Those are all diseases that really harm kids and have lifetime effects and sometimes death. But I mean, these are really nasty things. Vaccination is one of the sort of greatest medical discoveries ever. It goes back to the 1700s. You know, George Washington was vaccinating his troops against smallpox.
It has saved more lives than any medical discovery ever.
Yes, I think
by a
that's fair to say.
landslide.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That and clean water, and you basically have the modern world.
Yeah.
And without those things, you don't.
And what's really troubling for vaccines is they are a victim of their success.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And that's a real bummer. For the people who did not grow up around polio, as
Right.
my grandfather did, the notion you wouldn't get a polio vaccine for your kid is outrageous to me.
Yes.
But a modern person hasn't seen a generation of kids in wheelchairs and on
Right.
crutches.
And the way they work is this really clever thing that your immune system has cells that are listening, looking for infection, and they learn how to identify it and kill it and make antibodies to it. And you know, you are evolved to have this adaptive response that vaccines kind of take advantage of. The idea that it's sort of unnatural is bullshit. It's completely using this natural system that your body has evolved.
Right.
Right. And then the other thing that people always want to tie it to are, you know, developmental issues, development and autism, of course.
Yeah.
And all of that's been completely debunked. It's
Yeah.
all such bullshit.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't know, it just won't die. People really want to push it. And it's kind of scary if you think, from my perspective, I think, man, if we can't hold on to that advantage,
I
right?
know.
Then what are we doing?
Okay, this is just my hypothesis. It is the same part of your brain that makes us all very susceptible to religion that's being hijacked. Because it's driven by a notion of purity in the natural world.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's been these studies where if you plot on a U.S. map the lowest rates of vaccinations, they correlate perfectly with where Whole Foods are.
I believe it. Yeah.
And that's really troubling because these are people who shop at Whole Foods are also more often college educated. They're upper socioeconomically.
Yes. I mean, it's a great example of this thing that's become kind of associated with the political right in the sense of COVID, but actually before that was very much on the political left.
Yes.
Yeah, well, this is where the circle
Exactly.
meets.
Exactly.
Yeah, this sense of purity, this sense of
Natural.
nature,
Yeah.
There's a thing
natural.
about everything being natural and not non-toxic. And
The is-ought fallacy, we ought to teach that better, right? Just because something is some way doesn't mean it ought to be that way, first of
Yeah.
all. So just because polio exists in the natural world doesn't mean that we ought to just say, yes, let's have that.
it. Yeah.
It's good,
Yeah.
guys.
You naturally can't see at a certain age, and
Right.
we go get glasses.
Yes.
It's just people are very a la carte about
Yeah.
what they want to accept and what they
That's
don't.
right.
But a lot of people really, they think that it causes the person to change.
Yeah.
I know someone who is an anti-vaxxer and they were describing seeing someone get vaccinated and like the way they were describing it, they were like, I saw a shift in their eyes.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's because
Like
they
a
knew they were
horror
protected
film?
against COVID. They were happy.
exactly. They were smiling.
Yeah.
No, it was wild. Like
Yeah.
and I believed that that's what they saw,
That's-
like in their head,
Yes.
you know?
That's fair. Yeah.
But I don't know how to combat. I don't know how to tell someone like, no, you didn't.
Yeah. Well, back to anthropology and cultural anthropology and cultural relativity, I grant people their reality.
Yeah, I know.
But there has to be a place where we say, yeah, we appreciate and your beliefs, and everybody has their own perspective, but that we are going to pay attention to the numbers.
Yeah.
And there has to be some agreement about an evidence-based way
And
of
your
making
reality
decisions.
is fine, but when it starts impacting other people's realities, that's where I think we have to say no.
We wouldn't even have an issue if it didn't actually pertain to children, because that's what it's all about. I don't give a fuck if someone doesn't want to get vaccinated.
Yes.
If they're going to die of measles and you chose
exactly.
it, it's on you.
Yeah.
In the most literal sense, you have decided for your kid they'll have the same position as you will.
Right.
And it'd be like branding them your religion when you're born, or
Yeah.
branding them your political identity, or
Yeah.
that's the bummer about it is
Yeah, that's
they've
right.
inherited their parents' position on something, which is probably not fair.
100%. And they're not old enough to, the age of consent is there for a reason, right? And they're below that. They're sort of powerless to voice a different concern or voice a different view. Yeah.
And we're seeing outbreaks that are preposterous that we would see in this
Yeah.
time.
2025.
Yeah.
So that's really worrisome. I mean, if we want to get into this, but it's one of we're watching right now in real time, maybe the dismantling of one of the most amazing medical research apparatuses that there ever has been. I mean, and it's starting with the way that HHS is going to sort of, potentially being led by somebody who's really skeptical about vaccines. That's scary.
Yeah.
All the way down through
Kennedy.
all the way down through where they're changing the way the NIH is going to run, and NSF and National Science Foundation is going to run.
Yeah.
And I don't think people appreciate just how radical this is. I mean, this is the world I live in university research. People are really afraid about what the next year is going to look like.
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to do medical research?
Right.
Is there going to be the next discovery for the next vaccine? Is there going to be the next discovery for the next medicine or the next treatment? Because those are actually kind of on the table right now as maybe it's going to be very different, maybe not. But it's much harder to fix things than it is to break them.
Yes.
Yes,
So the
that is
timeline,
right.
I think, it's when we say in 2 years, gosh, where's the pipeline for new drugs? It's not going to be 6 months to put it back together like it was 6 months to take it down.
Right.
So that worries me
Exactly.
a little bit.
Well, Dr. Pontzer, this has been so fun. You're the first Herman I've ever met. And
You're the first Dax I've ever met.
look at that.
I've
Good. I'm
met
glad
other
I-
Monicas.
Yeah,
That's a great name.
More. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
It's
you.
trusted. Very trusted brand. We've got a lot of Monicas we like. But we have a character on the show, though, that is Hermium Permian.
Hermium.
Hermium
So
Permian.
that's close, but
And
not
Herman,
exactly.
he sounds like this. I've never met a Herman. This is really exciting
That's
stuff. And you're a professor and a scientist. Miss Monica, my mom, did you see this?
Yeah, it's really cool.
So Hermione and Herman sat in one room together. It's
yeah.
very exciting. Your book's awesome. I hope everyone's as interested in the human evolution
It's
and biology like
fascinating.
I am. Adaptable, how your unique body really works and why our biology unites us, as a beautiful message. And it's rooted in our story, which I find endlessly fascinating. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. Really fun.
Next up is the fact check. I don't even care about facts. I just want to get in your pants.
Do you want me to bore you with some mechanical stuff?
Oh boy, we're already so tired, but sure.
Okay. We are both drowsy.
I know.
What's your explanation? Well, yours is the weather. I guess I don't even need to ask.
But yesterday, the weather was top tier, gorgeous, and I was exhausted.
Yeah, so my explanation is I flew 7 a.m. flight on Friday to Nashville. So that's up at 4 a.m. to get in the car at 4:45 or whatever. Received my pontoon boat.
Oh wow.
I don't deserve it. It's too nice of an
Wow.
item for me.
Oh
I was
my
just like, I don't deserve this. It's so nice.
Wow.
It's so nice. I hit a button and the whole canopy goes up. The sound system is insane. It's the best sound system
That's great.
that I've ever heard. So many creature comforts. I love it. I did put up the Bimini and cranked the music and walked around the deck for a while and just pretended I was kind of hanging out.
Okay.
My friend Tyler made the funniest joke. I bet it's big in the boating world, but I'd never heard it. He said, it's the most fun you can have on a floating patio. And I was like, that is what a pontoon boat is. It's a floating patio. It's just a perfect rectangle.
Great.
Okay, bored. And then a lot of busy work readying stuff to depart. Whatever. Then I drove. Also, and my nose blowing's back a bit because my nose was so full on day 2 of the motorhome drive back. So clogged. Really clogged.
Well, maybe you have a bug.
No, I think I might have a bug.
I think I have a bug.
So, yeah, it's probably a bug. So, yeah, and then drove 2,000 miles and got home and got at it. Yeah, and just a bit exhausted. Okay, so as you were dying to know, what mechanical things happen on the bus?
Oh, that wasn't it?
No, nothing's happened so far.
Oh, I thought just the mention of the boat was mechanical.
Was enough about the bus.
The bus, yeah.
All in all, least amount of shit broke that ever has.
Great.
Inside of the front door, all of the molding, which is a big chunk because it's got a power shade in it, that thing came off. So that was flopping. Then it broke. Still not bad. Rear toilet, my bathroom toilet, no power. Took the switch out of the middle bathroom, plugged it into the back one. Okay, it's not the switch. Get home, start reaching out to the dudes I know that build the bus. Okay, this is a gratitude and a grievance.
Okay.
So grateful they talk to me and they help me every time. So grateful. But I'm talking with a newer guy and I feel like he underestimated my mechanical ability.
Okay.
So I'm like, where does this plug into? Maybe the module's bad, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh no, there's a fuse panel under the bed. And I go, okay. I look under the bed. There's no fuse panel visible. So now I'm going under the bed and it's an electric bed. So I can't remove the mattress and look under it. It's all bolted down with this huge heavy frame. That's 2.5 hours yesterday to get under the bed and get all the little plates off of things to find these fuses. Finally, I'm like, I film it. I'm like, there's no fuse panel under here. And I think he thinks I just can't find it. Then I start showing him videos like, I've taken apart everything. Oh, wow. So he's like, that's interesting. The only other place it could be is X, Y, and Z. Go there this morning. Look, no. Then there's this huge panel with all these other fuses on it. And I send a picture and say, before I take this off, do you think it could be behind here? They say, no, absolutely not. I take it off anyways. It's in there. After 3 days of searching for this fuse panel, I found it buried in a wall behind this other huge panel. Plugged it in. I have power in the back. Flushed it. It popped the fuse. TBD, more to come.
Wow. Okay. Can't wait.
I know. While I'm boring you, let me bore you a little more. 'Cause I didn't get to a couple things last fact check.
But I want to talk about my toilet.
Oh, okay. Tell me about your toilet before we move off the toilet topic.
So my plumber is at my house doing some repairs. Now, I had to leave in the middle.
Yeah.
And of course,
That's a tricky sitch.
It's a tricky sitch. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think you just had to do what you had to do, which is go to work.
Exactly.
So there's really nothing to think about. Is it ideal? No.
It's not ideal, right?
It's not ideal.
And I
But I don't think he's going to steal from you.
Either do I.
He's too obvious of a suspect.
Either do I. And he's a very nice man.
Do you know him prior to this, or is this his first trip over?
No, he's come over before. He's like the building plumber.
Okay, then I'm not too worried.
I'm not too worried. I just, it is weird to leave your apartment or house and leave a stranger in there.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd recommend it, but it is what I did. And I do feel a little uneasy about it.
It's fine. What do you think could happen? He'll look through your stuff?
I don't know. There's nothing even specific. It just feels
weird.
A little icky.
Yeah, icky.
Yeah. And I already have anxiety, as we talked about.
Right.
I have anxiety today.
Yeah. Premature death anxiety.
Yeah. I heard a very sad story.
Yeah.
I'll tell it. I'll tell it quickly. You told that. I can tell this.
Well, mine didn't make you sad, did it?
Sad that I had to listen to it.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, there's a makeup influencer that I follow that I really like. She had a new makeup video, so I clicked it, and it wasn't a makeup video. It was a very sad story about someone passing away in her family suddenly and unexpectedly. Very sad. So then I just started, this is how my brain works, right? Like sometimes something will happen. It's not every time. Sometimes I'll hear a story or something will happen sort of in the zeitgeist or in the news that will spark like a spell of anxiety for me.
Right.
And it's just like everything comes to the surface of all the bad stories I've ever heard, the scary stories, the unexpected.
So it's just rumination on scary stories.
Like the way life is so scary and unfair.
God, I'm
and
sorry
bad.
you have that.
Thank you, me too. Yeah, so my brain is filled with a lot of bad stories right now. And then I try to tell myself, like, this is what happened. You heard this story and it's why you're feeling like this and it's okay. But I'm also like, I'm pretty smart. So when I say it's okay,
you start poking
it's like
holes
there's
in
a
it.
dumb, you know, when people have angel and devil on their shoulder, mine's like I have a stupid mouse and a smart mouse. And
Is those smart mouse wearing glasses
yeah, obviously.
and a graduation gown?
And holding a little pen, like a quill.
Yeah, right. Really studious.
Yeah. And the stupid mouse is just wearing undies.
Sure, that are inside out.
Yeah. And she says, the stupid mouse is like, it's Monica, it's fine, it's gonna be okay. And then the smart mouse is like, what makes you think it's gonna be okay? It's not okay. This is life. This is what happens.
Yeah.
And then the stupid mouse is like, I guess that's true, but also you just have to accept it. And then the smart mouse is like, well, that's not helping. The acceptance isn't helping me feel better.
See, I would reverse those two mice. I think it's the dumb mouse.
Don't say that about the quill girl.
Listen, it's the dumb mouse who is saying you need to be afraid of dying and you need to be afraid the people you love are going to die. And then the smart mouse goes, you're ignoring the odds. You're just refusing to look at the odds, which is like 1 in a million you're going to know somebody who dies of an aneurysm.
Yeah, but it's actually not, it's not as pointed as that. It's not like, well, it does obviously start morphing into like my life and people and being scared, but it's actually more like the weight of the world. That the world has very upsetting things happening all the time. And I can walk through life ignoring that most of the time.
Yeah.
But then when it's like shoved in my face, I am forced to remember that that's part of it.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. It's like just overwhelm.
But even, I hear you, but even that, if you took your 37 times 365 days you've been alive.
What if I just was doing this the whole life?
Just gently knocking the whole time as you heard this. But I can't do that. You've hit the limits of my fast math. I mean, I could, but it would take me 5 minutes.
All right, we don't have to do that.
But suffice to say, over 37 years, that's 3,700, 37,000. It's over 150,000 days that no one you love has died.
Well, that's not true.
Oh, your grandpa died.
Well, no.
One day.
I know people who've died.
Out of 100.
This isn't that helpful. Like, it's not helpful to.
I just think the smart mouse should be the one that points out the actual odds in the data you've accumulated so far.
That's not how emotions work.
Right. The emotions are for the dumb mouse. No. I'm just asking you to flip the roles of the mice.
I know what you want me to do.
I think the dumb mice sees scary stuff in the news and gets really scared because they saw it. And then the smart mouse goes, yeah, but it's because you're seeing things from all over the world. There's 7 billion of us. You're seeing, it's very misleading.
But it's not misleading that the world has pain in it.
No, that's true. The world
That's
does
what
have
the
pain.
smart mouse is saying.
As the world is
yeah,
suffering.
so there's
The mouse is
there's-
Buddhist.
Well, obviously, the smart mouse is like, yes, this world has so much pain and suffering, and it's part of it.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's overwhelming for me.
Yep.
Even though I know it's true.
And I know you can't think your way out of it. I get that. But also, another angle I would framing is, yes, life is scary. It has moments of heartache and pain. So when you're not in those, they're coming. They're coming. And on that day, you get to experience what that is. But to waste any of the days that aren't those days is a little dishonoring to the days where there isn't any suffering.
Yeah,
No, that doesn't help.
I know. It doesn't really help. It's okay. Sometimes you have anxiety.
That's right. Some things I saw and thought of on my trip.
Okay.
I was at an In-N-Out in Barstow, and I was in the bus parking. And so other buses were arriving with people that were on tours. And there was a German group
Ooh.
on a tour of conceivably the USA.
Oh,
And they were
great.
stopping at In-N-Out. And the organizer of the trip was wearing an In-N-Out paper hat.
Cute.
Yes. And one of the German women had a shirt on that said, New York dreams, Brooklyn vibes.
Wow. So they had already gone to New York.
Clearly.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know what that means.
Brooklyn vibes is like,
You're chill.
yeah, it's more hipster.
In New York dreams, you want to be
New
on
York
Broadway?
dreams is
Or finance?
big city dreams. It's like
Big city dreams, backwater vibes.
Yeah, I don't know about backwater, but like it's like saying Hollywood dreams, Los Feliz vibes.
Yeah, I don't know if
You
I would
get
have
they're
that
different.
shirt.
Well, they wanted it.
Okay. I was watching Turning Point, which I was trying to tell you about in the last fact check, the history of the
Oh fuck.
Cold War. No, you're going to like this one.
Okay.
This is about the power of media.
Okay.
Okay. So Ronald Reagan was ratcheting up the nuclear arms race really dramatically.
Okay.
He really wanted to get leverage over Russia. He was war hawking. I've talked about this before. There's the only thing my mother never let me see in my whole childhood, The Day After.
Yeah, it was a movie.
It was a movie about what the day after a nuclear holocaust would look like.
Yeah.
And 100 million Americans watched it.
Wow.
It still has the record of the most viewed
Ever?
TV movie ever made.
Wow.
100 million Americans watched it. Ronald Reagan watched it. He was profoundly moved and he changed his course.
Really?
Yes,
And he backed off.
he did. And so began
Holy shit.
a more collaborative approach to nuclear disarmament. And I was like, we want to talk about the power of fucking movies and media?
I know.
100 million people see this thing and then the president completely changes course.
Yeah.
Like, don't underestimate it. Putin was obsessed with these KGB movies that were popular when he was a kid. He was trying to live out this thing he saw in a movie.
Right. So this circles back sort of to an ongoing debate we have. Not really, because I think we sort of agree, but the power of media is very extreme. And so then do we have a responsibility if we are participating in the media? Like if we're members of the media, is there a responsibility? Like if you're a filmmaker or
Yeah.
you're a podcaster or a whatever.
I don't think so. I think you make what you're drawn to. Whoever made The Day After was into making that kind of movie,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And then so they did that well. But I think to give yourself a cause. Now I have one that's clear to me
Right.
here,
Yeah.
which is openness, vulnerability,
Oops.
trauma, poop.
Yeah.
But I don't think do you think people have to have a,
No, I don't think you have to have a
because
cause.
I don't really trust everyone's thing that they
Well,
want
yeah.
to move.
No, I don't mean have a cause necessarily. I guess I'm saying, what if they had made a movie that was like what if it had made Ronald Reagan like blow up everything.
Yeah, right. Right.
That's possible.
Yeah, this one clearly was fearful, as everyone should be, of a nuclear disaster.
Yep.
Several times, the people in charge have been told that the other side had launched missiles. That's happened several times.
Ugh.
Thank God this Russian dude, he just refused to do it.
Yeah.
His computer was telling him that we had launched 200 nuclear warheads that were inbound and would be there in 8 minutes. And you just got to pray that no one ever responds. Because like I hate to tell everyone this, but if I'm in that job and I see that Russia has launched the entire arsenal on us, my reaction is not to kill all them people.
Right. What's it going to do?
What's it going to do?
Yeah.
We're all dead.
Exactly.
This isn't going to undead us.
Yeah.
And I'll just be responsible for killing hundreds of millions of people.
That's how I feel.
I hope that's how everyone feels.
They don't. A lot of people are like, yeah, you got,
I mean, they
you're
got to play
getting
the
us,
tape
we're getting
forward
you.
8, yeah.
Did you finish Paradise? James Marsden, friend of the pod.
Yes. Friend of the pod.
So it had an element of that, spoiler. I won't say anymore.
Tell me.
Remember, like, he decides.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
That show was great. And I've heard a lot of people talking about it.
Last thing on my trip,
Okay.
I watched the disappearing and murder of one of these girls. It's really
Abby Petito or something.
Abby. Yep. That's the one.
Yeah, I see it pop up a lot, but I haven't watched it. I don't think it's good for me to watch during my anxiety stuff.
No. Okay. I forget the people's names.
It's Gabby Petito.
Gabby and her, I don't want to say his name.
Okay.
And her boyfriend, they're going to go out and they're going to have like a vlogging. They're going to live in a van and they're going to be YouTube people.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, they're on the side of the road and the police are called because a motorist saw him hitting her in the car.
Right.
They pull up on them, or they pull them over. He was swerving. He's got some cockamamie story, blah, blah, blah. During the interview with the police, the guy who observed the hitting, he said, well, the gentleman was hitting the girl.
Oh, my God. He's like trying to be like PC about it.
Well, it's so weird. Like, you call a woman a girl, and then you call guys beating the shit out of a woman a gentleman.
I know.
He really flipped this.
He did. It was an accident.
I think maybe, you go into like police speak. Like, you think that's how the cops talk?
Exactly. I think that's what is happening. He like feels.
But then he should have said the gentleman was hitting the victim or something. He shouldn't have said the gentleman was hitting the girl.
I don't think he was equipped to really do this.
No, he's probably nervous being in it. I heard that line. I was like, oh my God, hold on. Did you just say the gentleman was hitting the girl? I don't think that you could say that.
Yeah, that guy should be canceled.
Okay, that you're now relieved of all my housekeeping from the bus trip.
No, I loved those last ones.
Okay, good. The crazier part of that story is like he comes home, she's missing.
Yeah.
The parents
Of the gentleman or the girl?
gentleman hit her, the gentleman abuser.
Uh-huh.
And they let him live at home for 2 weeks. And then when the cops come, they go, you can't talk to our lawyers. Like they get very involved in protecting him.
Oh.
And then they find this letter between the mom and the son that predates this. That was like, I love you so much. If you killed someone, I'd get a shovel and bury the body with you and all this stuff. It's really kind of like a look at what people do for their kids. I would do some terrible stuff for my kids. I can relate.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
I don't like that.
I know, but I have girls. It's hard. It's a little less scary.
I know, but like, okay, on The Pit show I watch, there is this woman.
Gentleman.
There's a storyline with this woman, and she comes in with her son. She's sick. The woman is sick, and the son brings her in, and the son has a very reclusive and
Lives in the basement, maybe.
yeah, but he's in school. He's in high school. Anyway, she's sick and she's throwing up, and then at one point they realize or she says, I've been poisoning myself to come so that he would bring me here because I think there might be something going on with him. And then
This is a crazy plot line.
No, it's
Going to
not.
call the cops?
No, because she feels like that's a huge betrayal. So she feels like the hospital
Okay.
can't get him arrested.
Of course they can, but continue.
Well, she doesn't know
Okay.
that. Okay? The husband has passed away.
All right.
Now, so then they're like, okay, maybe, but then they have to figure out a way to talk to him, and that's complicated.
Yeah.
And essentially, he runs out of the hospital.
He flees.
And then Dr. Robbie Noah Wiley, he goes chasing him, but then
He's so
can't find him.
athletic.
He's so hot,
Yeah.
and he can't
sprints.
find him. And then, but he has a list. The older mother found this list of girls he had written about.
Ooh.
And so Dr. Robbie is he's kind of taking it seriously, but
So
he's
he's kind of an investigator and a doctor?
yeah,
Okay.
he's kind of taking it seriously, but he's like, I don't really want to, if I go to the police and ruin this boy's life
Yeah.
for no reason,
Right.
That's his whole thing.
That's the conundrum.
Now, I don't want to spoil, okay, if you're watching The Pit and you're not caught up, pause right now.
Or fast
By
forward.
the end,
Pausing won't help you.
there's a mass shooting.
Oh, fuck.
And obviously we're meant to believe it's this kid.
Of course, red herring.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's the way it's going to go, but
Oh.
the things you do for your kids, tell me, please, if you saw, it's not going to work for your kids because it's
Go ahead,
2
let's
hours.
play
We
it
know
out then.
them. We know them, so it's trickier. But let's play it.
Let's play.
Because
This is a worst case scenario.
I think we have to play because I think everyone thinks this about their kid, that their kid is incapable of doing something really, truly horrendous. And that's
I
sort of
don't
what the
think
mom was
that.
saying.
That's not my hang up.
Okay, well then let's say that you found a list
Yeah.
of kids in the class.
Yeah.
What if it says I want to kill them and it's a
Right.
list?
Yeah.
What would you do?
I would ignore it. No, I'm teasing.
Oh
I would sit down and we would talk for a long, long while.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge gap between I wish these people were dead and I'm going to kill these people.
Yes, there is.
And you're trying to figure that out.
Yep.
And then you're also trying to evaluate, do they have the means to do this? Well, how seriously are they? If I had an inkling at all that this was a possibility, I would move. I would take the kids. I would move away from all these people. I would get her in therapy, hardcore, and I would get a tutor to come finish her schooling until she got out of this adolescent phase, and we would be checking in. I would not call the police. Is that what you're wondering?
Well, how fast are you going to move that day? Because I think if they have this need to kill,
Yeah, I also take them to school, so I could definitely pat her down.
that's true.
Yeah. People will be mad about that. I don't think the police have anything to add to make the situation better. I don't think removing her from the house and putting her in foster care is going to help. I don't think a state mandated counselor is going to help. I don't think jail time, I don't think they have a solution that would be appealing in this situation. They can't that's not what they do. So involving them, I'm not sure what that would get us. I'm going to remove her from the school. I'm going to make sure those kids are safe and we move. But there's no services that the city offers that are going to help her in this situation. And I just would want to help her.
Oh, I guess I don't know enough about that to know if that's
Homicidal
true.
teens.
Well, no, about what the police could do preemptively.
We'll think it through. Let's think of what they could possibly do.
If they have a list like that,
Yeah.
I think they could arrest them. I don't know if you can arrest them based on that. I don't know, actually. I think you could because it's premeditated.
Attempted, I don't know. Intent versus attempted. It's not attempted if she made a list. I don't know.
No, it's not attempted.
But regardless, sending her to jail is not going to help.
Well, it is gonna help protect the other kid.
Well,
It's
I'm going to
not-
remove her from those other kids.
I just think removing her from the situation isn't gonna. So yes, I guess it would protect those kids. Maybe I mean she might just like leave and go kill them. Like how can you know for just because you moved?
Well, I'd be moving to many states away.
Okay, but what if then she kills at the? Oh, you said you're gonna do a personal.
This
What
is
if
like
she
I
kills
did
the
a
tutor?
Jonathan Haidt really quick. I thought of all the ways that.
But like,
she didn't
I
wanna
don't
meet
think
any
you
kids.
really did. Like in real life,
Yeah.
if you moved some states over, unless you like literally kept her in her bedroom,
Right.
she's gonna be out in the world.
Well, yes, at a later date with a lot of therapy and assessment.
The therapy is gonna
Here's
be
a
interesting.
broader question. Do you think this is a broader, dicier, scarier question?
Okay.
Do you think it's possible that a kid could have those feelings and intentions in 11th grade and then grow out of that? I think I'm inclined to think yes. Now, I'm not saying everyone would, but I'm saying, do I think that's a possibility? Do I think there's crazy hormonal, confused, in a worse situation they're going to be in their whole life, kids that will be different as 20-year-olds? I do.
I think that is a possibility.
I think my main obligation is to protect any innocent kids from getting hurt.
Yes.
And once I've achieved that, I think I feel fine on my own to be trying to help her through it. And I
Yeah.
don't think the state would be helpful in that process. Some people will be screaming, "You're rich, you can do that." Yeah. But
Well,
the question
sure.
is, what would I do?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I guess if I had a kid at that school and my kid was on that list.
Yeah.
You then just taking her away, I don't think would cause me much peace. I think I would have more peace
If the kid
knowing
was
that
locked
kid
up.
was in juvie
Yeah.
versus their parents decided to take them a couple states over and like take it on and get therapy. Like, look, in
5 states over.
okay, 5 states over, and also
Arizona, New Mexico.
I am conflicted because also I agree that I think like a good therapist and a different, a safer environment for that kid is actually going to probably result in a better outcome for that kid.
Yeah. And all hands on deck.
Like I get that. And I get if that's my kid, I'm like, fuck that. That kid needs to be away and like, oh, that's it.
And for how long? It says you're buying yourself like a temporary peace of mind.
Well, all of it's temporary. If you go and you take your kid there, again, they're not going to like live in their room for another 50 years.
Right.
So that's
It
also
kind of times out the same. It's like by the time they'd be letting a kid out of juvie for having made a list,
Yeah.
would be the same time
Right.
Lincoln would be entering the real world as an adult.
Yeah. So I guess I would feel like I think there needs to maybe be some putting away during that
Some
time.
confinement.
Just to make sure.
I get it. I'm just being very honest about what I
Yeah.
would do. I would break a lot of laws for my kids. I would kill for my kids. I wouldn't kill otherwise.
Right.
There's a lot of things I
Right.
would do.
Yeah.
I would steal. I would do anything.
I don't think I'd be able to like kill another innocent person. I don't think I could do
Well,
that.
innocent. They have to be threatening your child for this to work. I wouldn't, if my kid said, I don't like the grocer, will you kill him? I would not do that.
Yeah.
All right, this is feeding into your anxiety a little bit, I think.
What if at the grocery store
Yeah.
she pulls a gun?
Oh, wow. Okay, this is a lot. So at the grocery store, Lincoln has a firearm.
Ugh, I hate this story.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, she has a firearm. She hates the grocer.
Yeah.
Mainly because he
Doesn't sell ripe pears.
no, there's something about his face she just really doesn't like.
Okay, that reminds me of Turning Point, but continue.
Okay. And she pulls out a gun and is about to shoot him.
Yeah, I tackle her.
No. This is the grocer then pulls out a gun
Okay.
to protect himself.
Yeah.
You're there
Yeah.
with your own gun.
Yeah.
What do you do?
And I have the opportunity to shoot him before
I think
he
so.
shoots her. That's a good one. You came up with a good one.
Like she's
That one's
the
really
one.
hard.
It is, right?
That one's really hard. Good job.
Would you ever maybe shoot her in the foot
Oh.
so that like she drops her gun?
I would just tackle her so he knew the threat was over and that he didn't have to shoot her.
Okay, that's your plan.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be very hard to kill the grocer if she pulled out a gun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But also he has a gun to your kid. Like
Yeah. Oh, okay. Turning point.
well, sorry, you started
This is what I
I
learned.
think.
So when Ukraine had their first elections,
Mm-hmm.
there was a pro-West candidate, and forgive me because I've forgotten these names, or I can't pronounce them to begin with.
Okay.
And then there was a pro-Russia candidate.
Okay.
The pro-Western candidate was leading by a lot. They poisoned him.
Who did?
Russia.
Oh, yeah. Duh.
And his face.
Yeah.
Have
They
you ever
use
seen
that-
this guy?
No, but they use that
He
poison
lived
a lot.
through it,
Ew.
but his whole face became inflamed and atrophied. I mean, they turned him temporarily into a monster.
Ugh, so awful.
Can you fucking believe that's what they...
Yes, they do this.
I know, it's maddening.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Oh my God. Oh, so what are the ethics of this? I wish someone would assassinate Putin so bad.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But he's inflicting
He's killing
harm.
so
Yeah.
many people. Yeah.
Now, do you think I could go to jail for saying that I want Putin dead?
No. You're just not allowed to say that about our president.
But it's kind of the same as the boy saying
The list.
Yeah.
Right. So what if they found in my bedroom a list and I
And it
said,
said
must
Putin.
kill, and I intend to kill Putin?
What can they do?
I think they'd probably give me $100 for a plane ticket.
I know. That's the thing. Well, actually, no, not currently.
Why?
Our government is not anti-Putin.
Well, our government is our leader,
Our leader
doesn't seem to
who
be
makes all the decisions.
Yeah.
All right, let's do some facts.
Let's do some facts.
This is for Herman.
Oh, Herman.
Loved Herman. Learned a lot. Okay, Gigantopithecus.
Yes.
I have largest ape to ever live, estimated to have stood about 10 feet tall and weighed over 500 pounds.
Oh my God. I want to see one so bad.
Yeah, I know.
I really want to see one.
When you do your time machine, you could go back and see one.
I could. I bet they're going to be hard for me to find, but I guess I'll know exactly where the bones are.
It says they're wandering the thick forests of ancient China during the last ice age. So you'd have to go back there.
That's not bad. This was
You'd have
16,000
to wear
years
a
ago or
coat.
something. Yeah. Some definite North Face gear, like I were going to Antarctica.
Exactly.
Boy, I'd love to see one. And they might think I was cute and not threatening, and they'd be nice to me, and then they could hug me the way I was saying I would like to be hugged.
Oh,
And maybe even rock to
you
sleep.
wouldn't feel scared and threatened?
I would, but if I noticed that they thought I was cute and tiny, I would appeal to their sense of safety. That's the point I was making about 2 months ago.
Right.
That you only act terrible when you're scared
Yeah.
or hungry. Yeah. They might want to eat me.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're like a little piece of bread. Okay, now malnutrition is bad for you.
Yeah.
School-age children who suffered from early childhood malnutrition have generally been found to have poorer IQ levels, cognitive function, school achievement, and greater behavioral problems than matched controls, and to a lesser extent, siblings. The disadvantages last at least until adolescence.
Yeah, at least. They're not going to get better.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your brain's
I mean,
already
that's
formed.
when your brain is
Yeah.
so mushy.
Ugh.
It's just trying to form is all.
It's not a fair planet.
See?
See?
That's what the smart mouse says.
It's not a fair planet.
Probably not. Okay, that's it.
That was it. Okay, that was light.
Light and easy.
Easy peasy. All
we
right.
like Herman and we like each other.
Yeah, we like each other. You have some anxiety, but it's okay.
It's okay.
It'll pass.
It'll pass. It will.
Tomorrow you'll be feeling 10 feet tall and bulletproof.
Gigantopithecus? All right, love you.
All right,
Bye.
love you.